Chapter 73. With tens of millions of square kilometers of land, Zhongzhou State was rich in resources and talented people. From an international point of view, everyone has a different view of the continent. Politically and militarily, Zhongzhou State was the most powerful country in the world. From the perspective of ordinary people, Zhongzhou State was the most mysterious and charming country in the East. In the eyes of the experts in the dark world, the vast Zhongzhou State, to put it bluntly, could be divided into 9 words. West Kunlun, North Taibai, Southeast City. In the hearts of the experts in the dark world, they were the 3 most powerful forces in Zhongzhou State. Kunlun City of Kunlun Mountain, Sai City of Taibai Mountain, and the border Praetorian Corps of Zhongzhou State. This was the backbone of Zhongzhou State's defense for the past 2 decades. It had been deeply rooted in Zhongzhou State for many years and was as stable as a rock. Other than the 3 superpowers, there was the Wang family of Beihai. This was a very special wealthy family in the world. For hundreds of years, both the Zhongzhou State government and the Wang family of Beihai had emphasized that Beihai province was a part of Zhongzhou State. But the fact was that very few people in the world thought that the Wang family of Beihai belonged to Zhongzhou State. This was a very strange phenomenon. The 160,000 square kilometers of Beihai province, from officials to military officers, were all appointed by the Wang family of Beihai. Even the top leader of Beihai province was selected by the Wang family of Beihai and then recommended to the decision-making committee. Among more than 30 provinces in Zhongzhou State, only Beihai province had such treatment. Even the residents of Beihai province would say that they were from Beihai instead of Zhongzhou State or Beihai of Zhongzhou State when they went out to places all over the world. This kind of strong sense of regional belonging was not uncommon at the provincial level. For example, most people from Guinness Island would say that they were from Guinness Island instead of Dongshan Island, and people from Gusu Island would say that they were from Gusu instead of Wuxia Island. But at the national level, in the entire Zhongzhou State, only people from Beihai province would say that they were from Beihai when they traveled around the world. This was the case even under normal circumstances. In the dark world, the experts would naturally separate the Wang family of Beihai from Zhongzhou State. It seemed that only in this way, when the experts of Zhongzhou State were mentioned, the foreign experts of the dark world would not feel so much pressure. Looking at the overall situation of the dark world, the most memorable ones were the masters on the divine and holy lists. The status of the God list could be said to be supreme. The holy list was second only to the divine list. There were a total of 30 people on the 2 lists, and they were the top big shots in the entire dark world. If Wang Qianzong of the Wang family of Beihai was added, 3 of the 4 invincible realm experts in Zhongzhou State were on the list, and all of them were on the divine list. The pressure was self-evident. If Wang Qianzong was excluded and the experts of Zhongzhou State were still extremely powerful, at least they would not make people feel desperate. On the same morning, when Wang Qianzong of the Wang family of Beihai went to Kunlun City, Flaming Fire, one of the 12 super masters of Samsara, also came to the top of Mount Taibai. The peak, which was nearly 3,000 meters high, was snow-white, magnificent and magnificent. Standing on the peak and overlooking the surroundings, one could see mountains covered in snow all year round. The white was quiet and peaceful, like a fairy tale kingdom, free of dirt and dust. It is indeed beautiful. It's even more beautiful than our headquarters. I just don't know what the future holds. Flaming Fire looked at the pure white snow and sighed softly. Are you thinking of your tribe again? A black figure stood beside Flaming Fire. He was slender and thin, and his whole body was shrouded in a large cloak. The hood of the cloak covered his face, making it impossible to see what he looked like. He stood quietly beside Flaming Fire with a long sword on his back. When he did not speak, he was like a strange shadow without any aura at all. But as he spoke, his whole body seemed to suddenly come to life, and there was suddenly a trace of extremely sharp sword intent all over him. His tone was soft and slow, but every word was like the sound of a long sword, showing off its sharpness. That's not a tribe. Flaming Fire's eyes were in a trance, but her tone was extremely calm. Standing in this place, it was indeed easy for her to think of the place she called home before she met the palace master. There was also dreamy white snow, a waterfall flowing down, and a cold pool that never froze all year round. But there was no laughter. That place was silent, solemn and rigid, like a fake landscape painting. The deathly stillness was devoid of any vitality, unlike here. Even in this world of ice and snow, it was still full of vitality. The black figure chuckled, and the sword intent echoed around him. He reached out and pointed forward, saying slowly, "There are about 2 kilometers left. Just go straight." Flaming Fire nodded and stepped forward. She had just taken a step. A warm voice with a hint of a smile suddenly rang out. It was calm and gentle, sounding refined and courteous. "There is a forbidden area ahead. What are you doing here?" Flaming Fire stopped and raised her head. A snow-white figure stood quietly on a small snowy hill a few dozen meters in front of him. He had white hair and white clothes, and he wore a silver-white mask. It was as if he had blended in perfectly with the snowy ground. He stood motionless, as if he had been standing here for a long time, but also as if he had just appeared. At this moment he seemed to have become a part of the wind and snow on the mountain. He was everywhere but nowhere to be found. Flaming Fire's pupils contracted slightly, and for a moment she felt that she could not lock on the figure in front of her. If they were fighting, she would not even have the chance to take the initiative to attack. The other party had completely integrated with the surrounding environment. Once he attacked, it would definitely be a matter of life and death. This was the fighting state of a top assassin. He did not move, but he would kill with one blow. Although the white figure opposite her spoke in a gentle tone, he was obviously ready to fight. Ahem. The black figure beside Flaming Fire suddenly coughed softly. In an instant, the dense sword intent broke out on the peak of Mount Taibai. The wind and snow were turbulent, the sword intent was like a dragon, and the sword energy was like a rainbow. In front of Flaming Fire, the seemingly real Snow White was broken like a mirror in the sword energy. The snow was still snow and the white figure was still white. Everything became clear again. "We are not enemies. Who are you?" Before the white figure was about to attack, Flaming Fire took the initiative to speak. The white figure surrounded by wind and snow stared at the darkness in his sight. His eyes were solemn, but the smile on his face did not diminish. "I'm Drifting Cloud from Sai City. How should I address you?" "Breeze." Drifting Cloud. They were the strongest assassin combination in Zhongzhou State. Both of them had the strength at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. They were known as the double walls of Sai City. Below the city lord, their individual strength might not be the strongest, but once they joined forces, they had the capital to be fearless. In the entire Sai City and even in the killer world, they were the real big shots. Flaming Fire nodded solemnly. "Samsara, Flaming Fire." Drifting Cloud was slightly stunned. Before he could speak, the black figure continued, "Samsara, Saint." Drifting Cloud's expression suddenly became solemn. Saint and Flaming Fire. Although they were both among the 12 super masters of Samsara, their status was absolutely different. There was no doubt about Flaming Fire's strength and status. But among the 12 super masters, Saint was the first super master. His mysteriousness was second only to the Palace Lord, and even his strength was the same. Since such a figure visited Sai City had to treat him with caution. Especially in the case that Sai City and Samsara Palace had no interaction before, the two super masters of Samsara Palace suddenly came here. What was their purpose? "What can I do for you?" Drifting Cloud's expression was solemn, but there was doubt in his tone. "We have a letter and we hope to hand it to Her Highness Hidden God in person." Flaming Fire said straightforwardly. "A letter from Her Highness Palace Lord?" Drifting Cloud asked attentively, and his tone became more and more solemn. The master of Samsara Palace was a mysterious figure in the whole dark world. Drifting Cloud did not think that she could have any interaction with his city lord. Thinking of everything that she had done in Billy State recently, Drifting Cloud seemed to have some speculations in his heart. Flaming Fire remained silent, showing an attitude of no comment. Drifting Cloud narrowed his eyes, adjusted the earphones around his ears and whispered something. Then he said to Saint and Flaming Fire, "Please?" No matter what the two super masters of Samsara came here for, they were guests, and it was always inappropriate to keep them out. The three of them walked all the way in the snow. About 2 kilometers later, a vast hall covered with snow appeared in front of the three of them. The hall was magnificent, and the buildings, which imitated the style of ancient palaces, stretched out unevenly, looking elegant and solemn against the white snow. A small number of flowers and plants were planted in front of each palace, most of which Flaming Fire could not even name. The brightly colored flowers and plants took root in the snow, making the snow whiter and the flowers more beautiful. The world of ice and snow had its own style. Flaming Fire, who came to Sai City for the first time, looked calm. But looking at the palace in front of her and the snow in front of her, there was an indescribable shock in her heart. It was not obvious, but it did exist. She subconsciously glanced at Saint beside her. Saint was wrapped in a black cloak. He was calm like a shadow floating beside her and did not say a word. Flaming Fire shook her head slightly, took a deep breath, and followed Drifting Cloud all the way into the main hall of Sai City. The main hall was called Changbai, which complemented the Changbai Peak in the Taibai mountain range. The interior decoration was simple and the space was large. 8 thick pillars carved with vivid patterns supported the roof. Under the extremely high ceiling, everyone inside felt extremely small. Inside the main hall, there were 2 rows of soft leather sofas arranged vertically. At the end of the sofas there were several steps. Above the steps, there was a long soft cushion which was obviously higher than the sofas below. A languid female figure leaned on the soft cushion behind, looking at Saint and Flaming Fire, who walked into the main hall with clear and indifferent eyes. Her figure was plump and soft and she wore a loose robe. A golden mask covered most of her face, revealing only her sharp chin and beautiful lips. The woman's clear and indifferent eyes flashed and she did not say a word. The sofas in the main hall were almost full of people. Roughly counting, there were about 30 of them. Each of them was dressed in snow white, with a mark of a golden mask embroidered on their chests. The mark was the size of a strawberry, shining magnificently in the soft light. Flaming Fire glanced around, keeping her composure. This was the Changbai Parliament of Sai City in Taibai Mountain, as well as the decision-making body of Sai City. In Sai City, Situ Tsangyue, the governor, had the highest decision-making and leadership power. But most of the time she rarely took charge of things and even did not show up. Every day she just accompanied the ice and snow of Changbai Peak and cultivated martial arts. In the case of Situ Tsangyue's silence, the 29 members of the Changbai Parliament were responsible for the daily operation of Sai City. In Sai City, which had less than 1,000 people, the 29 members could be said to be the real core of Sai City. The assassins of Sai City, the patriarchs of several wealthy families in the north, and the leaders of the special warfare system were all gathered together, and they controlled the highest voice of the special warfare system in the 3 provinces in the northeast of Zhongzhou State. Flaming Fire quietly looked at Situ Tsangyue on the soft couch. In that beautiful and lazy figure, she could only see endless confusion and loneliness. Among all the special warfare organizations in Zhongzhou State, Sai City could be said to be the most aloof one. For many years, they had stayed on the top of Taibai Mountain and controlled the overall situation of the special warfare in the northeast of Zhongzhou State. They did not expand, but they did not allow anyone to intervene. When something happened outside the northeast of Zhongzhou State, Sai City never took the initiative. Only when the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State made a clear request would they take action at once. After solving the problem, they did not ask for anything, but returned as soon as possible and continued to guard Taibai Mountain. As one of the special warfare giants of Zhongzhou State, the style of the whole Sai City was eccentric. They had no goals, no direction, and no desire, so that they were somewhat aloof from the government of Zhongzhou State. It was precisely because Sai City's aloof and desireless state was in line with the interests of many people that the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State decided to hand over Setting Sun, one of the 12 murderous weapons, to Sai City instead of Kunlun City. She was in the invincible realm, controlled Setting Sun, ranked on the divine list, and owned Sai City. Situ Tsangyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, had too many things. But such a hidden god gave Flaming Fire the feeling that she was really at a loss, so much so that she did not know what to do. That was a very numb and even a little dull attitude towards life. She was passive and decadent, muddling along. Flaming Fire was puzzled, but she was still polite on the surface. She even bowed slightly and said calmly, "Greetings, Your Highness Hidden God. Why are you here, Supermaster?" Situ Tsangyue, dressed in white, leaned lazily on the soft couch high above the main hall. Her tone was indifferent. "Here's a letter for Your Highness to read." Flaming Fire reached into her arms and took out an envelope. Situ Tsangyue waved her hand slightly. The air in front of Flaming Fire fluctuated. The weightless envelope in her hand suddenly rushed directly to Situ Tsangyue's tender white hand like a meteor. Flaming Fire's expression did not change. She stood there and waited. On the soft couch, Situ Tsangyue had opened the envelope and pulled out a page. The paper was obviously torn from a notebook, and it looked very irregular. There were only 11 words written on the pure white paper. The handwriting was delicate and elegant, and it was awe-inspiring. Desperate chase. 9 heavens bearing the wind. Li Tianlong. Situ Tsangyue's eyes flashed and she suddenly stood up. The paper in her hand turned into dust in an instant, fluttering in the air. Situ Tsangyue's eyes shone brightly like never before. With her action, all the members of the Changbai Parliament were completely focused. "Where is he?" Situ Tsangyue stared at Flaming Fire and asked. "Sky Academy." Flaming Fire said lightly. What's the relationship between him and the palace master? Is the palace master in Zhongzhou state now? Situ Tsangyue continued to ask. At this moment she seemed to have found her goal and direction. The powerful aura belonging to an invincible realm expert bloomed unscrupulously, grand and dazzling. The palace master is still in Billy state. My boss asked me to bring this letter to your highness. Flaming Fire told the truth in an old-fashioned tone. Boss? Situ Tsangyue raised her eyebrows slightly and felt a little puzzled. Yes, my boss. But this matter can represent the will of the palace master. I see. Situ Tsangyue sat back on the soft couch and looked at the scraps of paper still floating in the air thoughtfully. The scraps of paper in the air finally fell to the ground. Are you saying? Situ Tsangyue's eyes flashed, and her gaze suddenly fell on the black shadow beside Flaming Fire. Take off your cloak. Everyone in the main hall was shaken. If they could see the face of the most mysterious first supermaster in Samsara, no one would want to miss it. Why don't you take off your mask? Saint was motionless. His tone was indifferent and fearless. Situ Tsangyue's bright and condensed eyes narrowed slightly and she snorted coldly. In the quiet hall, there was a sudden wind. It rushed straight to Saint's face. Saint took a step forward, reached out and held the sword. The long sword on his back was suddenly unsheathed. There was a clanging sound between heaven and earth. In the hall, the swords of several experts rushed out of the sheath at the same time. The fierce clanging sound rushed out of the hall and echoed in the mountains. At the same time, it roared in everyone's heart. The sword intent was surging and growing endlessly. A smile gradually appeared in Situ Tsangyue's eyes. She whispered, "It's you." For a moment just now, she even suspected that this saint was the mysterious master of Samsara Palace. Now her guess was wrong, but it was not a loss to know the true identity of Saint. Saint loosened his hand holding the sword, and the clanging sound disappeared. He said calmly, "This sword is the sincerity of Samsara. Goodbye." He turned around and walked out of the hall. Flaming Fire followed him without saying a word. Outside the hall, the wind and snow were howling endlessly. In the hall, Situ Tsangyue looked at their backs silently and suddenly said, "Wait." She got up again. The whole hall fell into absolute silence in an instant. Situ Tsangyue's figure had rushed out of the hall. The endless wind and snow suddenly stopped. Only her figure moved forward in the white. Countless lifelike shadows drew a straight line behind her. The air was shaking violently, but there was silence between heaven and earth. Everything happened in an instant. Situ Tsangyue seemed to take only one step, but it also seemed to take many steps. When the shadows dissipated, she was already standing in front of Saint. Saint was motionless and even lowered his head as if he was in deep thought. The indifference in Situ Tsangyue's eyes faded, and her eyes were gentle. She chuckled and said, "Samsara used your identity as a sincerity, and I used my martial arts as a sincerity. Did you see it clearly just now?" "Thank you." Saint was silent for a long time. Then he bowed slightly and said in a dignified tone, "I owe you a favor." Only he knew what that moment meant to him. That was the real desperate chase. It was Situ Tsangyue's body movement in the invincible realm. All the essence of this body movement seemed to be vividly displayed at that moment. For people like Saint, who had stepped into the half-step invincible realm and was only one step away from the real invincible realm, that moment was like a bright light in the dark, and its importance was self-evident. "We're on the same side. Why are you so polite?" Situ Tsangyue smiled indifferently. She glanced at Flaming Fire and continued, "Tell your boss that I will send someone to Sai City." "Is it drifting cloud? Or breeze?" Flaming Fire asked subconsciously. Judging from Situ Tsangyue's attitude, she could be sure that the person she sent to the Sky Academy this time was an absolute big shot in Sai City. The leader of the assassination course group of the Sky Academy seemed to be settled. Breeze? Drifting cloud? No matter which one of them went, it could be said that it was condescending to go there. "It's neither." Situ Tsangyue turned around and said calmly, "It's tribulation." Not only Flaming Fire, but even Saint was shocked and his face changed dramatically. Tribulation. The only deputy governor of Sai City. The strongest chi-controlling realm expert. The lunatic who tried to enter the invincible realm in the chi-controlling realm half a year ago. He could be said to be the only lunatic in Sai City whose reputation was comparable to Situ Tsangyue's. The Lord of Shadow in the Dark World. The #1 assassin in Zhongzhou State. Tribulation was not on the list of the top 10 contemporary experts in Zhongzhou State. But if Tribulation was determined to assassinate, all of the top 10 experts would be doomed except for the first 3. Singh took a deep breath and looked at Situt Sangyue, who was already standing under the Changbai Palace. He said with a smile, "She is really a great god. Zhuang Huayang will have a headache." Under the Changbai Palace, Situt Sangyue did not look at the two leaving figures. She just looked up at the plaque hanging high in front of the palace and was lost in thought. Many years ago, the traitor who made Zhongzhou State suffer heavy losses and the man who made her life a success had personally inscribed two words on this plaque: Changbai. They knew each other until their hair turned white. But for many years, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, who had been feared by countless people, had always been alone, unattached, and had no one to rely on. Situt Sangyue looked up at the plaque. Her expression was soft and her eyes were sad. "Changbai, Changbai, if you are not here, who will I know in my life? For whom will I turn white?" The chapter of nearly 6,000 words was posted late. Thank you, Yuan Yang, for the monthly ticket of Bodhi Fantasyland. Chapter 74. Different from Sai City, which stood aloof from worldly affairs, as the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, Kunlun City paid attention to a majestic atmosphere in terms of scale and aura. It was also a city built in a world of ice and snow. The vast palaces of Sai City were the most conspicuous buildings. And Kunlun City was a real city. Kunlun City was located on the west side of the Kunlun mountain range, covering an area of dozens of square kilometers. It was built between Qingyun Peak and Linggu Peak, nearly 4,000 meters above sea level. It was covered with snow all year round, but the scenery was not monotonous and the climate was not cold. It snowed all year round, the climate was pleasant, and the flowers were blooming all year round. The scenery was picturesque. This was Kunlun City, the most peculiar place in the entire Zhongzhou State. The sun was setting. When the sun was about to set, on the road on the east side of Qingyun Peak, two figures walked slowly in the overwhelming snow. A young man and a middle-aged man walked side by side. Looking from a distance, they were like two black spots in the snow. If one did not pay attention, one would easily ignore them. The young man's footsteps were steady and powerful, and he walked very fast. He walked in the snow that almost reached his knees as if he were walking on flat ground. His movements were natural. Every step he took had a feeling that his body was stretched to the extreme, as if it was made by nature. Not to mention his physical condition, at least people would feel comfortable at first glance. The middle-aged man followed him casually, neither hurriedly nor slowly, but always kept walking side by side with the young man. The snow in the valley was blowing with the wind and it was cold. The middle-aged man in unlined clothes looked up at the seemingly endless snow in his sight, looking calm. "Sheng Xiao, can you hold on?" He glanced at the young man beside him and said in a steady tone. Wang Tianzong had just broken through and was seriously injured. He came to the snow mountain from the desert in one day. Even if he knew that his son was talented, he seemed to be a little worried. "I'm fine," Wang Xingxiao said with a smile, and every expression showed joy from the bottom of his heart. As the top wealthy family in the world, the Wang family of Beihai was too big, and Wang Tianzong was too busy. Among the young people of the Wang family of Beihai, he could be said to be the one who spent the longest time with his father, but the longest time was actually very short. Ever since he was young, his invincible father had always been silent and quiet, like a mountain peak that everyone could only look up to. This time, from the ocean to the grassland to the desert, and then to the snowy mountains, the father and son had been together day and night. It seemed that only at this time could he feel that his father's heart was very close to him, very close. He was no longer a young prodigy that others admired and valued. His father was no longer the invincible number one on the divine list and the leader of a wealthy family. It was simple and natural. Wang Xingxiao enjoyed such a journey from the bottom of his heart. No matter how hard and tired it was, he didn't mind. "Then hurry up." Wang Tianzong nodded and said in a calm tone. Wang Xingxiao agreed. His pace became more rapid and his body became more and more stretched. His every move was full of spiritual qi, revealing an almost flawless martial arts aura. Wang Tianzong still walked forward unhurriedly, but no matter how fast Wang Xingxiao walked, he could always walk side by side with him. In a trance, he didn't seem to be moving forward, but just standing there quietly. The snow under his feet and the snow-capped peak in front of him were retreating rapidly according to his will. The invincible realm expert who ranked first on the divine list seemed to have returned to nature, but no matter where he stood, he seemed to be the center of the whole world. The snow under his feet was getting shallower and shallower. A tall stone tablet appeared in the snow. The black stone tablet was 10 meters high and 3 or 4 meters wide, heavy and heavy. A few bright red words were engraved on the stone tablet. In the white snow, the black and red color looked extremely strange and dazzling. In the military forbidden area ahead, idlers stopped. The handwriting was wild and sharp, and every stroke showed a kind of sharpness and elegance that seemed to be flying out. Wang Tianzong stood in front of the stone tablet, staring at the handwriting on it, and said softly, "The military forbidden area." "Well, the military forbidden area." He shook his head, continued to move forward, and said calmly, "It's an eyesore." Wang Xingxiao had already taken out the heavy and broad sword behind him. A dazzling electric light lingered in his blade. Wang Xingxiao held the sword and chopped down. The blade rubbed against the stone tablet, and the flashing sparks flashed from top to bottom. Wang Xingxiao turned around and continued to move forward. There was a loud bang behind him. The stone tablet, which was 10 meters high, collapsed into countless pieces in an instant. Large pieces of stone flew and eventually sank into the snow. "Dad, are you sure that Kunlun City sent someone to attack Yuetong?" Wang Xingxiao, who had smashed the stone tablet, followed Wang Tianzong and asked softly. "I can only be sure that it was not done by Gu Xingyun." Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, the governor of Kunlun City, was also the top leader of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Of course, he had heard about the attack on his sister in Huading. If it was not done by Gu Xingyun, what did it have to do with Kunlun City? A good-for-nothing who can't even hang at the bottom of the holy list wants to rise to the top with a little cleverness. Idiot, it's ridiculous. Wang Tianzong twitched the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Since they want me to come to Kunlun City so much, I'll come and have a look. If I don't follow their wishes, how can I catch their tail?" Wang Xingxiao was silent and thoughtful. He knew very well who couldn't hang at the bottom of the holy list. Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City. Wang Tianzong could say that he was a good-for-nothing, but he was not qualified to say anything. He was known as a young heavenly son and had entered the thunder-shocking realm, but any invincible realm master still needed to be looked up to by him. Gu Qianchuan? He frowned and muttered to himself. In general, Kunlun City was generally harmonious. But according to his father, it seemed that Gu Qianchuan united with outsiders to seize power, and the attack on Yuetong was just one of the steps. When did the fight inside Kunlun City become so fierce? Wang Xingxiao couldn't believe it. Gu Xingyun was so powerful that it was almost impossible for him to control the situation in Kunlun City. Just like the current Wang family of Beihai, there were conflicts and contradictions among the major branches and lineal descendants, but everything was under control. But Kunlun City, how long had it been rising? It had only been 20 years, and the internal contradictions were so fierce? How could it be possible? Wang Tianzong stopped talking. The snow under their feet became lighter and lighter. They could even see some plants and flowers, which were delicate and lovable against the white snow. "Is this close to the Dragon Vein?" Wang Xingxiao whispered. Kunlun City was windy and snowy all the year round, but the flowers were blooming, and the city was as warm as spring. All of this was because of the Dragon Vein under Kunlun City. Wang Xingxiao had heard some rumors. It was said that the Dragon Vein would move on its own, but the time and direction of movement were uncertain. The Dragon Vein of Kunlun City had existed as early as 50 years ago. What was more rare was that there were two rare earth veins where the Dragon Vein was located. It was the pattern of two dragons playing with a pearl. Because of this, the Dragon Vein stayed here for a longer time. But under normal circumstances, the Dragon Vein should have moved to another place 15 years ago, but it was locked here by Xian Xuanzi, the eccentric of Taoism. This lock lasted for 20 years, and it was also the beginning of Xian Xuanzi's fame. Since then, people really regarded him as a metaphysics grandmaster who was as famous as Great Master Wu Wei. The flowers were blooming here and the temperature was gradually rising. It could be seen that they were not far from the Dragon Vein in Kunlun City. "It's in front." Wang Tianzong's face was calm, but his tone was a little complicated. He whispered, "When I was a child, I learned swordsmanship here. There was no Kunlun City at that time. It was just a few thatched cottages. Things remain the same, but people have changed." He laughed at himself and whispered again, "Things remain the same, but people have changed." Wang Xingxiao was silent. When his father was a child, at that time, there was no Kunlun City in Zhongzhou State. There was only the War God family and the Li family. People said that where the Li family was, there must be a Dragon Vein. But in fact, where the Dragon Vein was, there must be a Li family. It was self-evident who his father had learned swordsmanship from. "Let's go." Wang Tianzong continued to move forward and looked up. Through the howling wind and snow. At the end of his sight, the outline of a city had gradually become clear from blurred. The setting sun on the horizon was trying its best to burn the last of its afterglow. The sky that was vaguely covered by the snow-capped peaks was a fiery red. The brilliant light sprinkled on the snow-capped ground, giving off an orange-yellow color. In his line of sight, the blizzard city between the two snow-capped peaks seemed to be glowing, revealing a kind of grand magnificence and majesty. The temperature in Wang Xingxiao's eyes gradually decreased, and he slightly sped up his pace. The retro city walls and city towers were getting closer and closer. Wang Xingxiao could even see the two teams of soldiers standing outside the city gate who were in charge of guarding. The soldiers were lined up neatly with serious and indifferent faces and loaded guns. They were guarding the city in the icy and snowy environment. Such a military appearance could be said to have high morale. Wang Xingxiao gently moved his body, and the snowflakes and dampness all over his body disappeared in an instant. Stop. At the city gate, some soldiers finally noticed the two travelers, who were walking in the wind and snow. Everyone's body tightened almost instinctively, and the guns in their hands were slightly tightened. Although the muzzles were not pointed at Wang Tianzong and Wang Xingxiao, the solemn killing intent had begun to brew. What are you doing? This is Kunlun City. It's the forbidden area of Zhongzhou State. Don't you see the stone tablet? The two teams of soldiers rushed over neatly, and a captain with the rank of captain shouted angrily. Your stone tablet is of poor quality and I broke it. Wang Tianzong glanced at him and said in a cold tone. How dare you? The captain sneered, but before he went on, he saw Wang Tianzong's eyes sweep over. His eyes were not so fierce or domineering but ordinary. But under this glance, the captain suddenly lost all his courage. He opened his mouth but could not make any sound for a while. Who the hell are you? The captain's heart beat wildly for no reason. He took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice. Wang Tianzong did not speak, but looked up at the city tower above the city gate silently. Wang Xingxiao, who was carrying a huge sword, also said nothing. In the wind and snow, outside the city gate, the atmosphere suddenly became oppressive and cold. You can't enter the city. A drop of cold sweat flowed down the captain's forehead. He was loyal to his duty. Although his voice was dry, he still insisted to say, if you want to enter the city, I have to report. I won't enter the city. Wang Tianzong finally said slowly, this so-called city is too small. I just come to have a look and let you have a look by the way. Look at what? The captain was stunned and said subconsciously. Look at the sword. Wang Tianzong said softly. With his voice, the sky above the entire Kunlun city suddenly twisted violently. The sword intent, which was so grand that it almost filled the whole world, gathered. The afterglow of the setting sun was still dim. But the sky above Kunlun city had changed. At this moment, almost everyone in Kunlun city went out of their homes and looked up at the sky. The temperature outside the city was dropping rapidly. In everyone's horrified eyes, a huge sword with a length of thousands of meters and a width of hundreds of meters had been completely formed. The sky above the city was still changing. The air was compressed. The incredible sword, which was almost beyond everyone's imagination, became more and more solid, like ice crystals. The huge sword crossed the sky and turned slightly. The sword energy was in Zhongzhou. The wind and clouds surged and the whole city seemed to be shaking slightly. Gu Qianchuan, come out to see me. Wang Tianzong spoke slowly but his voice shook the sky. His calm and cold voice rang in the ears of everyone in Kunlun city. Everyone's heart was filled with despair. Stop. A frightened shout rang out. A skinny figure dashed out of the city gate at lightning speed. Wang Tianzong glanced at him expressionless. When the skinny figure rushed out of the city gate saw Wang Tianzong, his expression changed wildly. His original anger had completely disappeared, leaving only fear. His voice trembled and was almost out of shape, but he still persisted and asked, Your Majesty? What does this mean? Your Majesty. In the Dark World, every Invincible Realm expert could be called His Highness, which was people's respect for Invincible Realm experts. But the word Your Majesty was unique. It only belonged to the Wang family of Beihai and the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State. How dare you talk to me? Wang Tianzong looked at the skinny figure in front of him and said calmly, Where is Gu Qianchuan? First Elder just left for Huiting, the skinny old man said in a trembling voice. His code name was Skeleton, and he was a famous expert in Zhongzhou State. But in front of Wang Tianzong, he didn't even have the courage to speak loudly. Wang Tianzong frowned slightly and moved. The next second he appeared on the city gate tower. The giant sword in the air trembled slightly, and the majestic sword intent poured out crazily. The whole Kunlun city was filled with cold sword energy. "Your Majesty, please be merciful." Why on earth? Skeleton was scared out of his wits. He stood at the foot of the city and howled in despair. "Why?" Wang Qianzong smiled and said softly, "Nothing. I just don't like you." He paused and then said, "Kneel down." The whole city was dead silent. No one knelt down and no one dared to move. Wang Qianzong narrowed his eyes slightly. The giant sword in the sky shook violently and turned over instantly. Boom! Under Wang Qianzong, the city gate tower collapsed instantly. The 1,000-meter-long giant sword stood upright and rotated in the air, pointing straight at the ground. Wang Qianzong's body was suspended in the air, expressionless, like a god ruling the world. The skeleton's face was full of fear. He bent his waist, bent his knees, and unconsciously knelt on the ground. His face was blood red, but his knees did not move. He lowered his head and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive me." As he knelt down, all the soldiers in front of the city gate finally knelt down. Then it was in the city. One after another. On this day, under the Sword Emperor's giant sword, the whole Kunlun city knelt down. None of the tens of thousands of elites in the city had pride. Wang Qianzong stood in the air and looked at the people of Kunlun city kneeling all over the city. He narrowed his eyes and whispered to himself, "This is the posture you should have." His figure flashed, and the next second he had carried Wang Xingxiao away. In the wind and snow, the figures of the father and son were getting smaller and smaller, and finally became two black spots. The wind and snow filled Kunlun city. After a long time, the first skeleton who knelt down finally raised his head. At the same time, the 1,000-meter-long giant sword that had not dissipated above fell straight down. No! Skeleton's eyes turned red in an instant. Boom! The condensed giant sword fell to the ground in an instant, and the whole city shook violently. The city wall, the city gate, and countless buildings cracked and collapsed one after another like a landslide in the sky falling. One sword destroyed the city. Chapter 75. Old Master Dongqing asked Li Tianlan to live in Dongqing Rushi's place, but in fact, it was Dongqing Wudi's. The Dongqing clan, which occupied the mountain as the king, was extraordinary. But in fact there were only 6 villas on the big mountain. To put it bluntly, there were 6 families. These 6 families supported the most important branches of the Dongqing clan. No matter from which angle, there was a kind of prosperity like a towering tree, unattainable. Dongqing Wudi's villa was close to the top of the mountain. In terms of height, it was second only to Old Master Dongqing's main villa, and the size was basically the same. Li Tianlan didn't feel anything at first, but when Dongqing Qiuqi took him into a very large bedroom on the 3rd floor and smelled the fresh and elegant fragrance inside, he finally felt something was wrong. Sure enough, Dongqing Qiuqi told him clearly that this was Dongqing Rushi's bedroom and that it was the old master's idea. Li Tianlan was really in a dilemma. At the same time, he couldn't figure out why the old master was so anxious. Looking at his posture, it seemed that he couldn't wait to put Dongqing Rushi in his bed immediately. He was so anxious that Li Tianlan even felt a little absurd. If the Li family was still at its peak, Li Tianlan could understand what the Dongqing clan did, even though it was beneath their dignity. After all, with the status of the Li family at that time, many rich and powerful families would like to be tied to the Li family and use their granddaughters as bargaining chips. Many people would do such a thing. But now it was different. The Li family had long been in decline. Although Li Tianlan had entered the secular world, in the face of the extremely complicated situation in Zhongzhou state, no one dared to say that the Li family had a chance to rise. No one was even sure whether Li Tianlan could grow up. Under normal circumstances at this time, even if the Dongqing clan would not deny it to deal with him, they would at least quickly cut off relations with him and let the marriage contract be invalid. If there was really such a situation, Li Tianlan could completely understand it and he would not resent anything. Every man for himself would be destroyed by heaven and earth. His identity was a bomb. If he got involved with it, he might face endless hostility. What kind of behemoths were the Prince Group in Kunlun City? How deep-rooted was the Wang family of Beihai? Even if these were not mentioned, which of the family members of the 120,000 soldiers who were wiped out at the border with their father's treason did not hate the Li family to the bone? Now that so many years had passed, no one could be sure where some of the outstanding family members were. Once his identity was exposed, there would be countless opponents in the open and in the dark. No matter how strong the Dongqing clan was, they could not cope with it, and even risked being completely torn apart by the general trend. Their refusal to acknowledge the engagement was, at best, a means of self-protection. It had nothing to do with being noble or despicable. Li Tianlan was too lazy to resent anything. He had long been ready to give up the engagement. But when he came to the Dongqing clan, everything was King wrong. Not only did the Dongqing clan not intend to break the engagement, but they also couldn't wait for him to marry Dongqing Rushi. The old master's attitude was simply impatient. He directly sent him to Dongqing Rushi's bedroom. Li Tianlan felt helpless but also a little lucky. Fortunately, Dongqing Rushi retreated in advance. Otherwise, the old master would really make an absurd move of letting him sleep with Dongqing Rushi tonight. He had just tasted Qin Weibai, and it was time for him to taste the relationship between a man and a woman. At that time, if he really slept with Dongqing Rushi, it was really hard to say whether Li Tianlan could control himself. Li Tianlan instinctively wanted to change the room, but was refused. After Dongqing Qiuqi left, he hesitated and sat on the bed. After calling Qin Weibai, he was in a daze silently. A woman's boudoir should be the type of fresh, romantic, or lovely, but what Li Tianlan could feel here was only coldness and gloom. The light gray walls were full of cold metal texture. The furnishings in the room were simple and monotonous. The bed was big, soft, and comfortable, but from the bedsheet to the bedside table, it was all black without any pattern, looking old-fashioned and solemn. In front of the window was a simple and generous desk, also in a cold color. Several books were placed neatly on the desk. Only a photo frame on the desk could give people a little warm feeling. It seemed to be a family photo many years ago. Dongqing Wudi was holding two very young daughters, smiling freely. A young woman who looked very kind to Li Tianlan put her arms around Dongqing Wudi's neck from the side, looking very happy. Li Tianlan silently looked at the family photo, his body slowly lying on the bed, his expression calm. The elegant fragrance slowly floated into Li Tianlan's nostrils, filling his sense of smell. Different from Qin Weibai's natural richness, and different from Wang Yuetong's fragrance and freshness, it was a very elegant and quiet smell, leaving a deep impression. Li Tianlan closed his eyes. He was a little sleepy but he couldn't fall asleep for a while. His mind was full of the Dongqing clan. He always felt that whether it was Dongqing Hongguang, Dongqing Wudi, or even Thunder God, there was something wrong with the way they looked at him this time, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. The Dongqing clan was too warm to him, so warm that it even made him a little uneasy. Dongqing Qiuqi was relatively more natural, but that was because she regarded him as her future brother-in-law. Li Tianlan didn't get in touch with other people in the Dongqing clan, but just the few people he had met so far gradually made him feel a little overwhelmed. Kindness? He believed that the Li family's kindness to the Dongqing clan existed, but it was definitely not the main reason why the Dongqing clan was so warm. Any kindness was not enough for the whole Dongqing clan to accept him at the risk of the destruction of the whole clan. If he was just an ordinary person with a declining family, it was understandable that the Dongqing clan was willing to fulfill the engagement because of the kindness of the past. But behind the Li family's loneliness was probably the biggest political storm in Zhongzhou state in the past 2 decades. If he was with Dongqing Rushi, once his identity was exposed, the whole Dongqing clan would become the first target of countless people. Dongqing Hongguang knew this, but even so, he insisted on marrying his granddaughter to him. With such a resolute attitude, if it was only because of the kindness of the past and the engagement, Li Tianlan would believe it even if he was a fool. What was the purpose behind the series of actions of the Dongqing clan? What value did he have that he hadn't discovered yet? The Dongqing clan, which was unbelievably enthusiastic, was it an enemy or a friend? Li Tianlan's imagination ran wild, and he finally fell asleep in a daze. After an unknown period of time, there was a gentle knock on the door, and Dongqing Qiuqi's gentle voice sounded outside the door. "Tianlan, are you awake?" Instead of relaxing because of the enthusiasm of the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan, who was more vigilant, immediately sat up and answered. He washed his face in the bathroom of the bedroom and opened the door. "They're still at Grandpa's. It's just the two of us at noon. I made lunch. Would you like to have some?" Dongqing Qiuqi stood at the door and said softly with a smile. Li Tianlan nodded and said casually, "Sister Qiuqi, do you live here too? I just moved out last year and now I live with my wife on this mountain. The villa at the bottom is my home," Dongqing Qiuqi said softly. It could be seen that she had a good relationship with her husband. When she mentioned her husband, she smiled sweetly. "What does brother-in-law do? A soldier?" Li Tianlan followed Dongqing Qiuqi downstairs and asked with a chuckle. "He works in Luojing. He's the mayor of Luojing. He's very capable. Uncle Zhou said that the Zhou family will count on him to take over in the future." Dongqing Qiuqi's gentle and beautiful eyes glanced at Dongqing Qiuqi and said meaningfully, even if it's an alliance marriage, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I have a good relationship with your brother-in-law, right? Li Tianlan was stunned. He knew that she had heard from the old master that he had some resistance to the engagement. Was she here for work? The Zhou family? He knew little about the current six. The Zhou family seemed to be the backbone of the giant group. Together with the Dongqing clan and the Bai family, they formed the three giants of the giant group. All the voices of the giant group were basically made by these three giants. Dongqing Qiuqi marrying the heir of the Zhou family was mutually beneficial for both sides. It was also a good ending for Dongqing Qiuqi herself. Luojing was one of the sub-provincial cities in Zhongzhou state. It had just been applied for a few years ago. The heir of the Zhou family could become the mayor of Luojing and had a bright future. In contrast, although Dongqing Qiuqi was at the same level as her husband, there was no doubt that the eldest son of the Zhou family had a better future. Sister Qiuqi, I agree with you. I'm honored and even a little happy that the Dongqing clan thinks highly of me. But I have a girlfriend. I said I would marry her and I have to do it. Li Tianlan smiled helplessly. Your girlfriend is little Bai? Dongqing Qiuqi suddenly asked. Her tone was playful and a little strange. Li Tianlan suddenly remembered that Qin Weibai had once told him that she was best friends with a core figure of the Dongqing clan. Could it be Dongqing Qiuqi? The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. He nodded and said again, I will marry her. Dongqing Qiuqi giggled and walked downstairs quickly. Silly boy, even a married lady like me is tempted by a figure like little Bai, let alone a man. It's hard to say whether she will marry you or not. Li Tianlan didn't agree with this, but he wouldn't refute it. He went to the dining room and sat down. Looking at the exquisite dishes on the table, he took a bite and said with a smile, It tastes good. Rushi's cooking is much better than mine. If you like it, let her cook for you in the future. Dongqing Qiuqi tried hard to promote her sister. Li Tianlan looked a little embarrassed. He ate and didn't say anything. Dongqing Qiuqi smiled and stopped talking about this topic. Some things needed to be done slowly. Being too impatient would only be counterproductive. As a senior political official, Dongqing Qiuqi had a perfect grasp of the situation. When you were sleeping, I went downtown to buy you clothes. I didn't know what size you would wear, so I bought one for each size. Try it on later. After dinner, the old master said he would take you to the ancestral hall to burn incense. Dongqing Qiuqi picked up a mouthful of food and said softly. Li Tianlan subconsciously looked at his clothes. He went out in a hurry almost as soon as he got off Qin Weibai's body last night. As a result, Dongqing Wudi was even more anxious than him. He didn't even give him time to change clothes and directly took him to the Dongqing clan. After traveling thousands of miles, he was still in the moon-white silk pajamas. Li Tianlan didn't realize anything before. Now looking at his clothes again, he suddenly felt like a fool. Thank you. He rubbed his nose and didn't refuse. Not everyone had the courage to parade around in his pajamas. Dongqing Qiuqi smiled and didn't speak. Li Tianlan silently lowered his head to eat, but he was thinking about Dongqing Qiuqi's words. The old master would take him to the ancestral hall to burn incense? It seemed that he was really determined to pull him into the Dongqing clan. He frowned slightly. He just felt that it was more and more difficult to see the Dongqing clan's meaning. This was an era where everything was covered by countless appearances and grotesqueness. Good and evil, right and wrong, it seemed that everything could be covered with a seemingly beautiful coat. People's hearts were unpredictable. People's hearts were unpredictable. Why was the Dongqing clan so anxious? These days he was thinking about whether to change the update time. Chapter 76. The ancestral hall of the Dongqing clan was built halfway up the mountain, covering an area of about 1,500 square meters. It was a brick and wood structure with green bricks and green tiles. The four words Dongqing Ancestral Hall were engraved on the top of the archway from right to left. The scarlet ink stained the words, which didn't look sad, but had a kind of heroic beauty. A stone drum was placed on the left and right sides of the gate. Every detail of the entire ancestral hall showed a clear sense of simplicity and solemnity. Li Tianlan really didn't want to come before he completely figured out the purpose of the Dongqing clan. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of a suitable reason to refuse. Li Tianlan was also very clear that Dongqing Hongguang took him to the ancestral hall to offer incense, which meant that he must have regarded him as a close junior or even a grandson-in-law. This was a show of respect. If he refused too directly, it would be a slap in the face. No matter what purpose the Dongqing clan hid under its warm appearance, or whether the Dongqing clan would be an enemy or a friend in the future, it was absolutely not appropriate to fall out with them now. The afternoon was warm and sunny and the sun was just right. The ancestral hall of the Dongqing clan was surrounded by trees on three sides, looking more and more quiet and peaceful. Under the mottled shadow of the trees, Dongqing Wudi and Dongqing Hongguang, who arrived first, stood in a place with their backs to the light. They watched Li Tianlan get off the car with a calm face, but there was joy in their eyes. "Old master." Li Tianlan took the initiative to walk over and greet him. Then he looked at Dongqing Wudi and nodded. "Marshal." Dongqing Wudi nodded with a smile and didn't say anything. The marshal of Zhongzhou State was majestic and cold most of the time, full of killing intent. Only in front of his family would he take off his mask. At present, it seemed that Li Tianlan was the first person to be treated specially. Dongqing Hongguang frowned, glanced at Li Tianlan and scolded with a smile. "Brat, is it so difficult for you to call me grandpa? Even if my relationship with your grandpa is not as good as his relationship with several sacred guards around him, we are friends of life and death. If you don't call me grandpa now, won't you still have to call me grandpa in the future when you marry Rushi?" Li Tianlan looked embarrassed. He looked at Dongqing Wudi and subconsciously wanted him to help him out. However, Dongqing Wudi didn't stand up for him. Instead, he winked at him and smiled more widely. He touched his nose and was about to speak when Dongqing Hongguang continued, "I've prepared the invitation. How about next month? At the end of next month, it's an auspicious day. Come back then." Rushi has also agreed. "Next month you can get engaged. Don't worry about the holidays. I'll tell your headmaster." Tough and overbearing, this engagement was like a notice to Li Tianlan. It seemed that there was no room for him to resist at all. Li Tianlan frowned slightly. For the first time since he came to the Dongqing clan, he showed obvious resistance. His tone became heavier and he said coldly, "Old master, I told you that I already have a girlfriend." The smile on Dongqing Hongguang's face froze. Looking at Li Tianlan, whose momentum had changed completely, he frowned and said gloomily, "Qin Weibai is indeed a character, but you are in Zhongzhou State now. She can't give you anything. No matter how strong the palace master of Samsara is, she can't affect you here. If you want to develop abroad, Qin Weibai is your best choice. But in Zhongzhou State, the Dongqing clan is the most suitable for you. And only the Dongqing clan is suitable for you. You're confused. Tianlan, there are some things you should think clearly. Don't be emotional. You're different from others. You have too many things on your back, so much that you can't bear it. You're extraordinarily talented. It's no problem for you to enter the invincible realm when you grow up. But even if you're an invincible realm expert, how can you restore the glory of the Li family alone? The Dongqing clan can give you the help you need without reservation. Don't you know how much help it will give you?" Li Tianlan looked at Dongqing Hongguang expressionlessly and said nothing. These words were extremely harsh, but from another point of view, weren't they sincere? Dongqing Hongguang sighed, shook his head and continued, "Wudi took over your father's position. It's been 20 years. He should have taken action long ago. Why didn't he? Wasn't he waiting for you? In any case, we can't let the border Praetorian Corps fall into the hands of others. Once he takes action, Lazy can temporarily hold on for a few years, but there's no successor. What should we do after that?" He looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and said blandly, "I know you have a good relationship with Zhuang Huayang. Wudi and the leading cadre of the academics have a very good personal relationship. Do you understand what that means?" Li Tianlan suddenly looked up and raised his eyebrows. As the current ruling group, if he didn't add a specific title to the leading cadre of the academics, then it could only be that person. What did it mean for Dongqing Wudi to have a good relationship with that person, given his identity? Li Tianlan knew too little about the turmoil among the upper echelons of Zhongzhou State, but at least he knew that the academics and the prince group were not on good terms. There would definitely be a fierce game in the process of the replacement of the two ruling groups. Zhuang Huayang had said that the academics had very little say in the special warfare system. In this way, how much say did the academics have in the military, which was closely related to the special warfare system? This was already the third year of the leading cadre's position, and the first term was coming to an end. At such an important moment, he must take the opportunity to expand his influence. If his own people couldn't go up, he could only find allies. Would Dongqing Wudi be the ally that the academics needed? As one of the members of the decision-making committee of Zhongzhou State and in charge of the 550,000 troops of the border Praetorian Corps, Dongqing Wudi's status in the military could be said to be above tens of thousands of people, only under one person. If the academics regarded him as an ally, it certainly needed not the support of the 550,000 troops of the Border Praetorian Corps, but the dominance of the entire military. If Dongqing Wudi took another step forward, where could he go? It seemed that there was only the position of director of the decision-making committee of Zhongzhou State and the standing minister of the army headquarters. If he was still a member of the decision-making committee, then no matter where he went, it could be said that he would be promoted in public but demoted in private. If he became a director of the decision-making committee and presided over the daily work of the military of Zhongzhou State, only this position could be worthy of him, and it was also what Dongqing Wudi and the Dongqing clan needed most. After Dongqing Wudi left, Thunder God could hold the fort for a few years. According to Dongqing Hongguang, after Thunder God, the Dongqing clan hoped that he could control the 550,000 troops of the Border Praetorian Corps. A few years later, when he reached the thunder-shocking realm, he would indeed be qualified to take the military road, enter the decision-making committee, and become a director from a member of parliament. This road could also restore the glory of the Li family. If he took this road, as long as he grew fast enough and married Dongqing Rushi, he could get the full support of the giant group. At present, the risk of doing so was relatively small. Dongqing Hongguang was not joking when he said that he would use the whole family as a dowry. The alliance between the academics and the Dongqing clan, Zhuang Huayang's support for him, and that generous and loose cozying seemed to be gradually connected. Could it be that the old fox knew that the Dongqing clan had something to do with him from the beginning? Boy, don't let your grandfather down. The Dongqing clan is willing to pave the way for you with all its strength. You just need to go up. Dongqing Hongguang said slowly, and it's natural for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. As long as you treat Rushi well in the future, who will pester you about some private affairs? That's settled. Will you come back at the end of next month? No, Li Tianlan said lightly. He refused directly and decisively. Looking at Dongqing Hongguang's suddenly angry eyes, he smiled and said frankly, I don't want to let Grandpa down, but I don't want to let myself down. Old master, I don't need 3 wives and 4 concubines, just 1 is enough. The road you pointed out is good, but it's not suitable for me. The Li family only belongs to the special warfare system. I will take back everything of the Li family. Yes, I will take it back. Instead of getting something on the road of the Dongqing clan. I'm from the Li family, not from the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Wudi turned his head and looked at the woods outside the ancestral hall in silence. Dongqing Hongguang looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. His eyes were not angry but a kind of sadness and pain that Li Tianlan could not understand, and even a trace of guilt. Your father? He opened his mouth and said with difficulty. He was also the commander of the Border Praetorian Corps. That's different. Li Tianlan said lightly. How could it be the same? 20 years ago, when the international situation was at its most tense, there were frequent border conflicts between countries. At that time, the Zhongzhou Praetorian Corps had just been established, and the personnel organization was not as large as it was now. At that time, the Border Control Corps was under the jurisdiction of the Special Warfare System of Zhongzhou State, not the military of Zhongzhou State. How could it be the same? Dongqing Hongguang smiled bitterly and suddenly remembered the name Dongqing Huangtu. If there was no accident, Li Tianlan also knew the name from Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai. What kind of magic potion did that woman give you? Tianlan, you'd better stay away from her. Dongqing Hongguang took a deep breath and said sincerely. Li Tianlan's face suddenly turned cold and he said coldly, You don't have to worry about it, old master. Well, Dad, let's go in first. Time's up. Dongqing Wudi saw that the atmosphere was about to freeze and had to stand up to smooth things over. He sighed inwardly. The old master's mentality was completely different from Tianlan's now. The last sentence should not have been said at this time. Dongqing Hongguang came to his senses a little and said, Where's your little uncle? Hasn't he come yet? There were 5 brothers in the old master's generation. However, in the past years, 3 of them had died on the battlefield. Today, only he and the youngest Dongqing Hanjian were left. Dongqing Hanjian also lived on the mountain, not far away, but for some reason he hadn't shown up yet. I'll call little uncle. Dad, take Tianlan and Qiuqian first. Dongqing Wudi said and took out his mobile phone. Dongqing Hongguang nodded and walked directly into the ancestral hall with Li Tianlan and Dongqing Qiuqi. The ancestral hall in Dongqing City was divided into 3 sections. The space was huge. The first section was the stage, and on the left and right sides were wing rooms and wineries. It was an original ancient building. Walking in here, it was like walking into another era. The second section was the main hall. On weekdays, all the important meetings of the Dongqing clan were held here. The third section was the forbidden area of the Dongqing clan. Inside there were all the spirit tablets of the deceased of the Dongqing clan. It was an independent courtyard, occupying almost a third of the ancestral hall. Dongqing Hongguang took the lead and walked into the courtyard of the third section. The spacious courtyard was quiet. The interior space was large, but it didn't seem spacious. Instead, it seemed a little crowded. Stone tablets appeared in front of Li Tianlan one after another, like a stone forest. Each stone tablet was densely engraved with small characters. A large number of stone tablets were arranged together, which was an indescribable shock. Li Tianlan subconsciously held his breath and began to read from the first stone tablet. One after another. The contents on the stone tablets were the same but not exactly the same. Each stone tablet was engraved with the life stories of the deceased of the Dongqing clan. The courtyard became quieter and quieter. All the noise seemed to have disappeared. Li Tianlan walked silently and looked at the stone tablets one after another. Understanding these stone tablets was almost equivalent to understanding the seventh generation of the Dongqing clan, which had been passed down to Dongqing Wudi's generation. For hundreds of years, this was the core and soul of the Dongqing clan. It had always been. 37 stone tablets. 37 people's lives. 31 people died in battle and 6 people died of old age. Li Tianlan's face was flushed, and he only felt excited. Standing here, he felt like standing in front of the large cemetery behind the border camp. But this time, there was no resentment in Li Tianlan's heart, only glory. This was the glory and sorrow of the entire Dongqing clan. This was a crazy family, a glorious and cold-blooded family. A family that regarded killing as glory. Each stone tablet was engraved with 2 sentences, one in front and the other in the back, neat and uniform, stroke by stroke. Don't step back even if it's warm. Don't look back even if you miss it. On the indomitable road, in addition to the bodies of the losers, there are also the songs of the winners. We died for a good reason. Was this the motto of the entire Dongqing clan? Li Tianlan wanted to laugh, but his heart was unprecedentedly excited and heroic. The stone tablets in front of him were neat, like a forest of heroic souls. Behind these stone tablets was the Dongqing clan's unswerving determination to kill and the unperturbed death that had been passed down for hundreds of years. We died for a good reason. We died for a good reason. Li Tianlan clenched his fists subconsciously, and there was an emotion that almost made him look up to the sky and roar in his heart. He took a deep breath and bowed deeply to the stone forest in front of him, just for the dozens of cold-blooded and warm-blooded heroes of the Dongqing clan. This is the Dongqing clan. Tianlan, as long as you are willing, such a clan is willing to spare no effort to help you in the next few decades. If you ask for anything, we will grant it. Dongqing Hongguang's voice sounded in front of Li Tianlan, sonorous and powerful. Help me? Li Tianlan straightened up and looked at Dongqing Hongguang. Dongqing Hongguang looked at him without flinching, with all kinds of emotions flashing in his eyes, extremely complicated. Li Tianlan subconsciously turned his head to avoid the old man's eyes and whispered, "Why? Old master, I'm not that noble, not to mention the friendship between the Dongqing clan and the Li family. If it's just because of friendship, if it were me, I wouldn't risk the destruction of the whole clan to pay for it. I can't do it, so I don't think others can do it." He said indifferently, "So, what on earth do you want for the Dongqing clan to help me like this?" "A child." Dongqing Hongguang said calmly, "You and Rushi are engaged. I want a child of you and Rushi. It's as simple as that." "Nothing else?" "Yes, but I can't say." "Oh, then I can't believe it." Li Tianlan laughed at himself and said slowly, "And what you want, I can't give it to you." He looked at the stone tablet in front of him, stepped forward and whispered, "Old master, after offering incense, I'm going back to Huading. My girlfriend is still waiting for me. I miss her very much. I'll go with you." Dongqing Hongguang nodded and said. Li Tianlan stopped and suddenly looked back, his eyes as sharp as a knife. Dongqing Hongguang was still calm and said with a chuckle, "Don't be nervous, I just want to talk to her. By the way, I need Boss Qin to solve some problems for me. There are 5 free tickets every day and they're all free. Brothers, don't forget to vote." "Thank you." "Thank you. How about changing the update time to 2:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m? Chapter 77. Got the notice. Special warfare will be on the shelves next Monday. I want to inform you in advance. 6,000 words. Today it will be 10,000 words again. At 9 o'clock in the evening. The helicopter of the Dongqing clan landed on the open space of the Yonghua villa in Huading again. Li Tianlan, who had stayed in Zhongyuan province for less than a day, returned here. He was still accompanied by Dongqing Wudi and Thunder God, but Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Qiuqi, two important figures of the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Qiuqi was the mayor of Wudong New District in Huading. She came back to work on the way while Dongqing Hongguang came to ask Qin Weibai for help. Li Tianlan didn't say anything on the surface, but he had some guesses in his heart. The so-called help was mostly because of the name Dongqing Huangtu, which made him uneasy subconsciously. There were too many contradictions and mysteries behind the name Dongqing Huangtu. It seemed to be a taboo, hiding even deeper than the inside story of his father's treason case. Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing had never heard of him. Even Dongqing Qiuqi didn't know of his existence. When he asked Dongqing Qiuqi about him, her reaction didn't seem to be fake. If her reaction was real, what did it mean? Dongqing Qiuqi looked only 26 or 27 years old, but in fact she was a senior official at the level of deputy governor of Zhongzhou State. She had lived in the Dongqing clan since she was a child, but she didn't know of Dongqing Huangtu's existence. He couldn't say that she lost her memory, could he? When Dongqing Qiuqi looked at him blankly and asked who Dongqing Huangtu was, Li Tianlan even felt that this person didn't exist at that moment. And in the ancestral hall of the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan didn't see a stone tablet belonging to Dongqing Huangtu. Dongqing Hongguang's behavior was too abnormal, and his reaction seemed a little intense. Although he said he had never heard of the name, it seemed that he was trying to cover it up. Dongqing Huangtu did exist. At present, according to Li Tianlan's speculation, he should have died 30 years ago, which was the most reasonable possibility. Only in this way could he explain why even a core figure like Dongqing Qiuqi didn't know of Dongqing Huangtu's existence. Maybe she was just born then? Maybe she didn't remember? And this was the only way to explain the absence of Dongqing Huangtu in the major events that happened in the past 2 decades. But this most reasonable explanation also had a big loophole for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai said that she had met Dongqing Huangtu and even got her belongings. In terms of timing, it didn't match at all. So far, it seemed that all the information he got about Dongqing Huangtu was extremely confusing and even contradictory. Li Tianlan didn't know what this meant. He wanted to have a good talk with Qin Weibai, but he was worried that she would think he was petty and jealous. He could ignore what others thought, but he couldn't ignore what Qin Weibai thought of him. When the plane was about to land, Li Tianlan looked at the Yonghua villa in the distance and simply stopped thinking about it. He was just curious. No matter what, Dongqing Huangtu had died, so it had little to do with him. There would be no conflict of interest. So he simply let it go. It had nothing to do with him anyway. Standing on the lawn where the helicopter landed and looking at Qin Weibai's villa in sight, Li Tianlan led the way with a soft expression. He hoped that after Dongqing Hongguang met Qin Weibai this time, the engagement between him and Dongqing Rushi would disappear. Building number 9, that's my home. Li Tianlan pointed to the villa in front of him, which was still lit up. It seemed that because he was close, his voice became warm, and there was a strange light in his eyes. Dongqing Hongguang took a deep look at him, nodded, and said nothing. They entered the courtyard one by one. The front door of the villa was pushed open from the inside to the outside, and Qin Weibai's figure appeared at the door with a quiet and soft smile. Dressed in a white dress, black stockings, and high heels, her silky long hair was carefully tied up. She stood quietly in front of the door, like a wife welcoming her husband home. Every move she made seemed to exude a beauty and gentleness that seemed to emanate from her bones. Li Tianlan slightly quickened his pace and came to her. He whispered, "Why are you dressed like this?" "I took a project in Qinzhou. I just came back from the company and haven't had time to change clothes." Qin Weibai said softly, holding Li Tianlan's hand. The light in the villa bathed her, making her seem to exude a very warm light, soft and dignified. "Are you hungry? I'll prepare the meal." "Don't bother." Dongqing Hongguang's voice sounded behind him, and his tone was a little complicated. "We are uninvited guests. Sorry to disturb you, Boss Qin. Old master, when Qiuqi got married the year before last, I went to the Dongqing clan and almost became Qiuqi's bridesmaid. I lived there for nearly a week. Now you say this, do you blame me for not knowing the etiquette and not visiting you?" Qin Weibai held Li Tianlan's hand tightly and said with a soft smile. Dongqing Hongguang laughed heartily, and even the complex emotions in his eyes seemed to fade a lot. They walked into the villa while chatting. Li Tianlan didn't see horsewoman, but he saw flaming fire in the kitchen. He asked casually, "Where are the headmaster and Badian?" "After you left, they went straight back to the Sky Academy." The headmaster said that it's not peaceful outside now, and it's safer in the Sky Academy. Qin Weibai replied. Li Tianlan nodded slightly and took Ning Qianqing and Li Baidian back to the Sky Academy for protection. Although it was a concession, it was the safest way. Is it about the Zhong family and the Tan family? Dongqing Wudi said, Don't worry, Boss Qin. After leaving Huading, I'll go to Yuzhou and then return to the border. Zhongzhou State will give you an explanation. As for the two families in private, Marshal, don't worry about it in private. I can handle the Zhong family and the Tan family, Qin Weibai said lightly. Qin Weibai said lightly. When she mentioned the two wealthy families in Huading, there was no other emotion in her tone except confidence. In this state, Qin Weibai was strong and cold, which was the most fascinating thing to see. Dongqing Wudi nodded with a smile. He glanced at Li Tianlan and said softly, This boy looks calm, but he's actually reckless. Tianlan, have you ever thought about what will happen to you if the Sky Academy doesn't care about you and it's inconvenient for Boss Qin to take action after you crippled Zhong Xiaofeng? Yes. Li Tianlan nodded and said calmly, At worst it'll be a life and death struggle. I don't have the resources and connections of the Zhong family and the Tan family, but what I have, the Zhong family and the Tan family don't. As long as I have a sword, no one can take it. Dongqing Wudi was slightly stunned. A life and death struggle? He smiled bitterly. This kind of crazy temperament was exactly the same as the Dongqing clan. They sat down on the sofa. Knowing that they were coming, Qin Weibai had already made tea. The living room was filled with the fragrance of tea. Qin Weibai lifted the teapot, as if she didn't know how to take care of the guests at all. She poured the first cup of tea to Li Tianlan and whispered, Be careful, it's hot. Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi, who were left out, looked at each other. They were not angry, but their eyes were strange and they looked confused. Dongqing Qiuqi looked even more incredulous. When she got married, Qin Weibai really almost became her bridesmaid, but Qin Weibai's charm was almost irresistible. Even in a bridesmaid's dress, Qin Weibai's limelight directly overshadowed her, the bride, so she gave up. But it was enough to show the relationship between the two. The word best friend was appropriate. During the few years they had known each other, Dongqing Qiuqi had a deep understanding of Qin Weibai's pride and indifference. In Huading, she had seen a lot of so-called successful men who would be overjoyed just because Qin Weibai said a few words to them. She had also seen a lot of rich and powerful men like Wang Xiaoyao who felt lost in front of Qin Weibai. She had seen a lot, and naturally understood how noble, reserved and unattainable Qin Weibai was in the hearts of those men. More than once, she had been curious about what kind of partner Qin Weibai, who regarded all men as nothing, would find to spend her life with. She even thought that her best friend would be alone for the rest of her life. In the end, instead of being single, she found a boyfriend at a speed that made everyone dumbfounded, and they were living together. At this moment, Dongqing Qiuqi looked at Qin Weibai in front of her. It was really familiar and strange. Was this considerate, docile and gentle woman sitting next to Li Tianlan really the same person as Boss Qin, who used to be proud and reserved, her bestie? She subconsciously looked at Li Tianlan. She didn't know what her cheap brother-in-law was capable of to train Qin Weibai like this. She thought of her younger sister, Dongqing Rushi, and shook her head. She had mixed feelings. Boss Qin, I've been a soldier all my life and I don't know how to beat around the bush. I have something I need you to clear up for me. I wonder if you'd like to talk to me alone? Dongqing Hongguang was completely straightforward, especially in the face of things he cared about. He sat down on the sofa, took a sip of the hot tea in front of him and said directly, About Dongqing Huangtu? Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's profile seriously, as if she could not get enough of it. Hearing Dongqing Hongguang's words, she blinked and chuckled. Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi's pupils contracted instantly. She really knew something. Yes. Dongqing Hongguang took a deep breath and said in a dignified tone, Boss Qin, can I have a word with you? Who is Dongqing Huangtu? Is he also a member of our Dongqing clan? Dongqing Qiuqi was stunned. She first glanced at Li Tianlan, and then looked at Dongqing Wudi and asked in a doubtful tone. Qiuqi. Dongqing Wudi's face changed and his tone was slightly heavier. Dongqing Qiuqi was stunned and then stopped asking. Okay, let's go to the study. Qin Weibai stood up. She looked at Li Tianlan's slightly frowning eyebrows, smiled and said softly, You stay and take care of the guests. I'll be right back. Li Tianlan nodded and watched Qin Weibai and Dongqing Hongguang walk into the study. He narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. Dongqing Qiuqi looked at Li Tianlan's expression, suddenly smiled and said softly, You're really lucky, boy. Li Tianlan was stunned. Maybe you didn't realize it yourself, but when Xiao Bai is with you, her eyes don't seem to have anything else in them. All the time her eyes are on you. Seems like she likes you to the bone. To have such a beautiful woman as your girlfriend, and in the future, you will have my sister. Don't tell me you don't have the fortune? Dongqing Qiuqi looked at Li Tianlan with a strange look in her eyes. Li Tianlan smiled and picked up the teacup to drink. Qin Weibai's study was clean and elegant, and all the decorations were clear at a glance. Bookcases, sofas, desks and water dispensers were simple. Only the golden carpet on the ground added a trace of luxury to the study. Qin Weibai came to the desk and didn't pour water for Dongqing Hongguang. She sat down behind the desk and said calmly, "What does the old master want to know?" Dongqing Hongguang was silent for a moment. It seemed that he didn't expect Qin Weibai to be so straightforward. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Boss Qin, where did you hear the name Huang Tu? Is it important?" Qin Weibai looked into Dongqing Hongguang's eyes. "If you know it, others can naturally know it. How can there be an impenetrable wall? Don't you think so, old master?" Dongqing Hongguang lowered his head and pondered. He inadvertently lit a cigarette. When the smoke drifted away he was shocked. When he subconsciously wanted to put it out, Qin Weibai shook her head and said casually, "It doesn't matter. Tianlan also smokes. I'm not allergic to the smell of smoke." Dongqing Hongguang smiled bitterly, and his eyes were struggling. He looked at the stunning woman in front of him, who had a mysterious aura around her in everyone's eyes, and tentatively said, "In Zhongyuan province, Tianlan said that Huangtu was besieged and died. It's betrayal." Qin Weibai's face grew colder. In the lingering smoke, Dongqing Hongguang couldn't see her eyes clearly. Only a cold voice sounded and drilled into his ears. Besieging was a statement to the public. The real cause of his death was betrayal. Dongqing Hongguang instantly straightened up, and the momentum of a thunder-shocking realm expert soared. Who was it? The person he loved the most was also the person who loved him the most. Qin Weibai's tone was as calm as stagnant water. Dongqing Hongguang's expression changed dramatically. His lips moved and a name was on the tip of his tongue. He wanted to say it but he didn't dare. "It's not the one you think." Qin Weibai shook her head calmly. After a short silence she said again, "Do you know how Li Kuangtu died that year? What happened that year was too coincidental, too coincidental." "What do you want to say?" Dongqing Hongguang's face grew paler and paler, even a little painful. "You've guessed it but I have no evidence so I can't give you an answer. Your guess is probably what I think." Qin Weibai glanced at him and pointed to the water dispenser. "If you want to drink water, help yourself." Dongqing Hongguang smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said sadly, "Then what should I do now?" His expression was bleak, but there was an extreme coldness and anger in his tone. "You don't need to do anything. Just wait. When Tianlan grows up, I will help him at all costs with all my might." Qin Weibai's eyes were bright and dazzling, full of indescribable affection and persistence. Dongqing Hongguang was silent for a long time before he asked, "Samsara is in Billy's state. Does it need help from the Dongqing clan? If you're willing, I want to borrow 10 heavenly rainbow from the Dongqing clan. Of course, we will give you a satisfactory reward afterward." Qin Weibai was quiet, but what she said hit Dongqing Hongguang's heart directly. Heavenly rainbow. As a military giant, the Dongqing clan had been concentrating on researching some firearms that could pose a fatal threat to the masters of the 4 realms of martial arts in recent years. An important figure of the Dongqing clan even had a lifelong wish to research a quasi-murderous weapon. At present, the most famous product of the Dongqing clan was Mad Shot. Heavenly Rainbow was an upgraded version of Mad Shot, with higher cost and more sophisticated structure. 10 Heavenly Rainbows. The Dongqing clan now had 10 Heavenly Rainbows at most. This kind of weapon that had not yet been put into service was a top secret in the Dongqing clan. How did Qin Weibai know? The intelligence agency of Samsara is really resourceful. I admire it. Dongqing Hongguang took a deep breath and said, "I can lend you Heavenly Rainbow. It's a loan. What can Samsara give the Dongqing clan?" "A full blow from a murderous weapon." Qin Weibai lowered her eyelids and said blandly. Dongqing Hongguang narrowed his eyes. A full blow from a murderous weapon. Although the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World were ranked in order, each of them could pose a huge threat to the masters of the Invincible Realm, even a fatal threat. This condition was extremely valuable. Which murderous weapon? Dongqing Hongguang asked attentively. Qin Weibai didn't say anything. She just kept silent. Dongqing Hongguang seemed to understand. He nodded and stood up, saying, "I'll send someone to send Heavenly Rainbow tomorrow." He turned to the door. When he was about to go out, he suddenly turned back and whispered, "Samsara knows the Heavenly Rainbow of the Dongqing clan. It's surprising, but it's not impossible. But where did Boss Qin hear the name of Huang Tu? How can you even know anything about him?" Qin Weibai turned her head and looked at the night outside the window. After a long silence, she whispered, "There's an old monk. I used to follow him for several years." Dongqing Hongguang took the lead to walk out of the study. Seeing him, Li Tianlan stood up subconsciously. Just as he was about to say something, Qin Weibai followed him out. "Dad." Dongqing Wudi stood up subconsciously and called him. Dongqing Hongguang looked at Li Tianlan with a complicated look in his eyes, then nodded and said in a low voice, "Go back to Zhongyuan." Dongqing Wudi was stunned. He didn't seem to expect the old master to be so straightforward. He nodded silently and walked to the door. Qin Weibai and Li Tianlan walked them out of the villa. Standing at the door, Qin Weibai glanced at Dongqing Qiuqi and said with a smile, "You're not staying here tonight?" "Forget it. I don't want to be a third wheel." Dongqing Qiuqi giggled. "There's a standing committee meeting at the beginning of the month tomorrow. I'll call you after the meeting. Shall we go to the beauty salon together?" "Forget it." Qin Weibai shook her head, looked at Li Tianlan and said softly, "I'm going to Billy State tomorrow night. I'll accompany Tianlan during the day." Dongqing Qiuqi smiled playfully, nodded, and left after Dongqing Wudi. "Are you leaving tomorrow?" Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and asked in a disappointed tone. "It was an impromptu decision to come back this time. I need to arrange things over there as soon as possible." Qin Weibai took Li Tianlan back to the villa and took him directly to the dining room. "At most half a year. I can come back in half a year. During my absence, you're not allowed to be abducted by Wang Yuetong or Dongqing Rushi. Do you understand?" Li Tianlan nodded with a wry smile, but he was not in high spirits. Qin Weibai glanced at him and then at Flaming Fire, who was still busy in the kitchen. "Is the soup ready?" "Yes." Flaming Fire answered. "I made soup for you at noon. The heat is just right now. Drink some." Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan and said, then walked into the kitchen. Flaming Fire came out with Qin Weibai, who was holding a bowl of soup. She glanced at Li Tianlan. The supermaster of Samsara went upstairs with no expression on his face. Out of sight, out of mind. Qin Weibai put the soup on the table and sat opposite Li Tianlan. She said softly, "It's very nutritious. Have a taste. You should pay attention to nutrition in the future. Life at the border is too hard. Now try as much as you can." Li Tianlan drank the soup in silence and nodded without saying anything. "What's wrong? Are you unhappy?" Qin Weibai's tone became lower and gentler. "No, I just feel a little reluctant to see you leave tomorrow. I really can't bear to see you go. A hero's spirit is short, and love is long. Today I finally understand the meaning of this." Li Tianlan took a big gulp of the soup, as if he wanted to suppress the sadness in his heart. He shook his head helplessly. Qin Weibai snorted softly and her eyes were like silk, coaxing me with sweet words again. "What do you want?" Li Tianlan glanced at Qin Weibai, and his heart skipped a beat. "Tianlan." Qin Weibai's tone became more and more charming. "Do you want me to crawl over, or do you want me to crawl over?" Li Tianlan breathed heavily. He stared straight at Qin Weibai's face and stammered, "Crawl? Crawl over?" Qin Weibai seemed to have gotten the answer. She glared at Li Tianlan, and her eyes were charming and shy. Her body quietly slipped under the table and crawled under Li Tianlan's feet. She knelt down on her knees in front of Li Tianlan. I know this by accident. I didn't do it well. Don't laugh at me." Under the table, Qin Weibai's voice was trembling, charming and gentle. A pair of small trembling hands reached over and found his belt. In the rustling sound, a gentle and delicate warm touch came directly. Li Tianlan gasped. All that was left in his mind was Qin Weibai's rosy and delicate mouth. That was the second heaven. Li Tianlan's mind was blank. 1 minute. 5 minutes. His body became tighter and tighter. Finally he collapsed on the chair. He seemed to have no strength at all. Qin Weibai poked her head out from under the table. She pouted and looked at Li Tianlan. "Eat it." At this moment, Li Tianlan didn't know what he was thinking. He subconsciously opened his mouth and ordered in a tough tone. Qin Weibai blinked and looked at him with resentment in her eyes. She moved her mouth and finally swallowed everything in her mouth. Bad guy, she said softly and looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. Li Tianlan's mind was blank. His eyes were red. A raging fire was burning in his chest, making him crazy. Drink soup? Drink shit. He suddenly bent down, picked up Qin Weibai's delicate body and rushed upstairs. Qin Weibai exclaimed and patted Li Tianlan's back with her small hand. She smiled and said, "Put me down first. Rinse your mouth. It's so dirty." Well, it should be, okay? Well, it's okay. The chapter of more than 6,000 words could have been posted at 2 o'clock. But there were too many words, so I wrote a little longer. Thank you to Tree in the Sky, Moon by the River, Husband Xiaoyu, Zero Icicle, and Yuan Yuan for your support and monthly votes. Thank you. Brothers, vote for Special Warfare if you have the votes. Chapter 78. On the shelves next Monday. Advance notice. When Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai sent several important figures of the Dongqing clan out of the villa, on the balcony of the 7th building, less than 300 meters away from Yonghua Villa, a middle-aged man in a black robe was quietly watching the scene in front of him through a telescope. Through the telescope, Dongqing Wudi and Dongqing Hongguang walked in the direction of the helicopter. Dongqing Qiuqi left from another road, and Li Tianlan took Qin Weibai's hand and returned to the villa. Seeing all this, the black-robed man's mouth twitched, and his face became dignified. What's wrong, black-robed man? Did you see any big shots? Next to Black Robe, a woman who was also dressed in black looked at his expression and spoke with a gentle smile. Although the woman's appearance was ordinary, her temperament was gentle and elegant. She had a mature and intellectual feeling to her. Especially when she smiled, her every move was extremely charming. Even if her appearance was ordinary, this kind of person who exuded a womanly aura from her bones could still be considered a stunner. Big shots. The black-robed man raised the corner of his mouth, and his smile was a little cold. They are really big. How many of the 2 patriarchs of the Dongqing clan are bigger than them? Dongqing clan? The expression of the black-robed woman changed, and her eyes became vigilant. West Kunlun, North Taibai and South Dongqing. Among the 3 superpowers, the Dongqing clan was the only one without an invincible realm expert, but it was also the most troublesome target for these foreign forces. The internal structure of Kunlun City was complicated, involving too many interests and secrets. In Zhongzhou State, when one met Kunlun City, there was no need to rush to fight. There was still the possibility of a transaction, and the possibility was not too low. Sai City of Taibai Mountain stood aloof from worldly affairs. It guarded the northeast of Zhongzhou State all year round, deterring countries such as Snow Country, Outer Mongolia, Gaoshan and White Robe. Without clear orders from the higher-ups of Zhongzhou State, they would hardly intervene in matters outside the northeast. Only the Dongqing clan was the craziest and the most unreasonable. Dongqing Wudi was known as the god of massacre, but it did not mean that his ancestors were nice people. This family, which had been decisive in killing for hundreds of years, seemed to be extremely bloodthirsty in nature. The patriarch of each generation could be said to be a ruthless person who killed without blinking. When Dongqing Hongguang served as a member of the decision-making committee of Zhongzhou State and the standing minister of army headquarters, he had caused heavy losses to their organizations. After Dongqing Wudi took over the Border Praetorian Corps, he had made their organization suffer for many years. About 13 years ago, the news that hundreds of elites from their organization had sneaked into the border to pick up an important person was leaked. As the commander of the Border Control Corps, Dongqing Wudi personally led people to intercept them. Hundreds of elites were wiped out at the border of Zhongzhou State. It was at that time that Dongqing Wudi stood among countless corpses and said something, which was still talked about by people in the dark world. None of my enemies survived. This crazy style of action, which was so crazy that as long as they were enemies, they would not leave anyone alive. Not to mention foreign forces like them, even many people in Zhongzhou State did not approve of it. International human rights organizations even blacklisted the entire Dongqing clan. However, the Dongqing clan always went their own way. Every time they fought, there was bound to be a river of blood. For people from foreign forces like them, few big shots in Zhongzhou State were more important than the Dongqing clan. The woman in black's eyes flickered. There was vigilance but more of a hidden killing intent. Why did the Dongqing clan come here? She whispered to herself and subconsciously narrowed her eyes. Does the Dongqing clan have something to do with samsara? Isn't that what we want? The black-robed man sneered, and his eyes were a little ferocious. Rose, what are you worried about? The more forces that boy is involved with, the better it is for us, and it is in the best interest of the second master. If not, why would the second master let you and Yuehua help me? The woman was not angry at all. She became more and more gentle like water and perfectly integrated with the night. She shook her head slightly and said softly, I'm worried that the Dongqing clan will become a variable. These days, I heard that the young man disabled Zhong Xiaofeng, the youngest son of the Zhong family. Tan Qinghua even brought the elites of the Eastern Theater of Operations to seek revenge. It was Zhuang Huayang who held Tan Qinghua back until Dongqing Wudi came to help. We always thought that Dongqing Wudi did it for Ning Qianqing. So what? The black-robed man's tone was cold and cruel, and his words were full of killing intent. In the organization he was not good at planning anything, but he was one of the best executors. Although his realm had been regressing over the years and he was about to leave the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, he had always maintained a high degree of tacit understanding with the second master for many years. So even compared with his heyday, his status in the organization did not decline much. Moreover, the target this time was Li Tianlan, the descendant of the Li family who had caused him serious inner demons for many years. How could he be in the mood to think about other things now? Now, almost every thought he had was about how to torture that little bastard to feel good. Rose glanced at him and then at the black-robed man's ferocious look. She sighed and knew that he would not listen to anything at this time, so she simply stopped talking. She turned her head again and looked at the 9th building, which looked hazy in the night. Her emotions fluctuated, and for the first time she hesitated about the upcoming action. Hasn't Yuehua come yet? The black-robed man asked in a gloomy tone as he watched Dongqing Wudi and his son walk away through the telescope. She's accompanying the second master. She'll come later. Rose's tone was indifferent and her face was calm. The black-robed man glanced at her and said no more. In terms of foundation and history, their organization was not much worse than the Wang family of Beihai. Although it was difficult for a while after they left Zhongzhou State in the early years, after they found another foundation, after hundreds of years of development, they had flourished and gathered experts. There were many experts of the thunder-shocking realm in their organization, but there were very few women, especially the very charming female thunder-shocking realm experts. Rose was one of them and so was Yuehua. Both of them were the mistresses of the second master. Now Yuehua was accompanying the second master, but Rose was waiting for him here. Maybe she was already jealous. The black-robed man was very wise not to talk about this topic. Rose turned back to the villa and went straight to the hall. She sniffed the smell of blood in the air and frowned in disgust, but she did not say anything. They were not the owners of this villa, but in the entire villa area, this villa was the only one that was safe enough to observe the situation in the 9th building. Black Robe was like a dove occupying a magpie's nest. He directly killed the owner of the villa. The bodies of the owner's family were still on the side, and blood was flowing in the living room. Rose did not like this kind of atmosphere, but fortunately it was only for one night, so she reluctantly endured it and passed. She pulled out a small box from the corner of the living room, walked back to the balcony, opened the small box and took out an instrument from inside. She said, "Don't look at it. I'll just turn on the machine. Someone from the headquarters will take action later to invade Huading's traffic network. But we need to use the instrument here to complete the positioning and scan all the vehicles near the 9th building. In this way, when we take action tomorrow, we can control their position at any time." She paused and said with a smile, "I can have a good sleep tonight." The black-robed man put aside the telescope in his hand, looked gloomy and did not speak. A phone suddenly rang. Rose took out her mobile phone and glanced at the number. She immediately answered and said softly, "Second Master. How's the preparation going?" On the other end of the phone, Second Master's low and soft voice sounded. "The target has returned to the 9th building. Everything is ready. We'll find the right time to take action." Rose held the mobile phone and reported in a cautious tone. "There's no need to look for it. Tomorrow morning is the best time. Tell the black-robed man that he must kill that young man. He can only succeed, not fail." Second Master's voice was still low on the phone, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Rose grunted and was silent for a few seconds. She suddenly said, "Is it because of her?" "Oh, Qin Weibai. You saw her once in England 2 years ago." "I know. Now you see her living with Li Tianlan. Are you jealous?" Rose gritted her teeth and plucked up her courage to ask. "Ridiculous." Second Master's breath stagnated, and then he became a little angry. "Rose, remember your identity. This is not a problem you should care about. I've asked Moonlight to bring a recovery potion to the black-robed man. You must kill that young man, understand? Recovery potion. It could be said to be one of the high-level potions within their organization. It could restore people to their peak strength in a short time when they were seriously injured. For people like the black-robed man who were not seriously injured, after taking the recovery potion, he could completely return to his peak state. This time they just wanted to assassinate a non-entity who had not reached the ice-condensing realm, but they sent 3 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. This style of doing things could no longer be described as striving to be foolproof. I thought you were going to lend the murderous weapon of the organization to the black-robed man. Isn't it better to kill the target with one shot? Rose said in a somewhat agitated tone, her voice sharp. The black-robed man looked at her in surprise, turned around and quickly left the rooftop. It would do him no good to listen to this kind of conversation. On the phone, Second Master took a deep breath and said in a cold tone, "Rose, your current mood is no longer suitable for this action." Rose grasped the phone tightly, bit her lips and said nothing. For the glory of the organization, what's the point of personal feelings? Tomorrow is the most suitable opportunity. Once Li Tianlan dies, Zhongzhou State will become extremely lively. This is our chance, the chance we've been dreaming of. What kind of nonsense are you talking to me about? The Second Master's tone was extremely heavy. He was usually a person who did not show his emotions on his face. With such a tone, it was obvious how agitated he was right now. Rose took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She held the phone and said, "Li Tianlan is not so simple. Dongqing Wudi and Dongqing Hongguang have just come to the number 9 villa, and the academic style of doing things is stable. But this time, Zhuang Huayang protected Li Tianlan at the risk of falling out with the Prince Group, which is enough to explain the problem. I know you want to use Li Tianlan's death to lure Li Honghe out. But if the Li family, Samsara Dongqing clan, and the academics unite, what kind of power will it be? Second Master, this action is too risky." The more she spoke, the lower her tone became. The more she spoke, the more she felt that her inference was correct. This time it was not a big deal, but now so many forces were involved. A slight move in one part would affect the whole. Once Li Tianlan died, who knew whether it would be a surprise or a nightmare waiting for them? Isn't that just right? Second Master was silent for a while and said with a chuckle, "Do it cleanly. What's the risk? At that time, you just need to hold Horsewoman and Military Counselor with Moonlight. Even with Flaming Fire you can hold them for a while. Can you do it? Even if Li Tianlan re-enters the fire-flaming realm, how long can he last in the hands of the black-robed man who has taken the recovery potion?" Rose was silent. Somehow she felt more and more uneasy. After a long silence she suddenly said, "Second Master, have you ever thought that if Li Tianlan's highest realm was not the fire-flaming realm? How can the successor of the Li family be ordinary? With their inheritance, if Li Tianlan's talent is good enough, it is not impossible for him to enter the thunder-shocking realm. They have the invincible manual." "So what?" Second Master's tone was a little impatient. "He is only in the chi-controlling realm now. Even if Li Tianlan is lucky enough to enter the thunder-shocking realm, he will die once he uses the power of the thunder-shocking realm. Do we need to discuss this topic now? But in case. There is no in case. If there is a so-called in case, then give up the black-robed man. He should have died 20 years ago. Who can recognize him now?" Rose's face changed and she fell silent again. Give up the black-robed man? Maybe this was the worst plan of Second Master? But was it really worth it? "Rose, tomorrow is the best chance, even a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Second Master explained patiently, "I got a very reliable news. After his son was disabled, Zhong Yongming didn't say much at the meeting of the decision-making committee. He just emphasized the importance of the stability of Huading. The more he did this, the crazier they would be to retaliate against Li Tianlan in private. What you don't know is that Wang Tianzong took his heir to Kunlun City yesterday and split Kunlun City with a sword. Gu Xingyun has said today that he asked the Wang family of Beihai to give him an explanation. What's more coincidental is that Gu Qianxuan has come to Huading, and Wang Tianzong is about to arrive now. He will meet Li Tianlan tomorrow morning. After this meeting, the black-robed man will kill Li Tianlan. What do you think will happen then?" Rose held the phone and felt her scalp tingle. If that was the case, if Li Tianlan died, the Li family would lose all hope. What would Li Honghe do in despair at the border? Once Li Honghe made a move, Samsara Dongqing clan, and the academics would react immediately. Who was their target? The Zhong family was most likely to retaliate against Li Tianlan. The Wang family of Beihai had enough standing to kill Li Tianlan. And Kunlun City was eager to get rid of the Li family. Coincidentally, Li Tianlan would meet Wang Tianzong tomorrow. What was more coincidental was that Gu Qianxuan was in Huading at this time. With so many coincidences, what kind of storm would break out under their deliberate operation? After the storm, would there be a situation that the organization had always wanted to see in Zhongzhou State? Where will Li Tianlan meet Wang Tianzong tomorrow? Rose asked in a low voice. In an instant she had made up her mind. This was indeed the best chance and worth a gamble. Garden party. It's secretly arranged by Wang Xiaoyao. Second master said flatly, but don't worry. After tomorrow's meeting, the boy will probably return to the Sky Academy. At that time we will kill him near the gate of the Sky Academy. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the academics won't take action. Then the show won't be so wonderful. Rose said yes and hung up the phone. Thinking of the news second master said, she shook her head subconsciously. The meeting between Li Tianlan and Wang Tianzong was personally arranged by Wang Xiaoyao. Such a top-secret thing should be spread out. After hundreds of years of wind and rain, the Wang family of Beihai seemed to be a little unstable inside. She stood silently on the balcony, looking at the increasingly blurred Villa number 9. Her eyes gradually became sharp. The Li family. Li Tianlan. The right time, the right place, and the right people. The general trend was coming and the storm was about to rise. How could you not die? How dare you not die? Today's 11,000 words were updated. More before the bookshelf. I'm trying my best. Chapter 79. It will be published tomorrow. It will be another 5,000-word chapter. Do you think it will be more than 10,000 words today? At 9 o'clock in the morning. While Li Tianlan was sleeping soundly, the sudden ringing of the phone disturbed his dream. Li Tianlan moved in a daze and instinctively wanted to ignore the ringing, but the caller was extremely persistent. The phone rang again and again, and the originally pleasant ringtone became more and more harsh. He frowned and reached out to pick up the phone next to the pillow. He put the phone to his ear and said hello. Senior brother, are you back to Huading? Wang Yuedong's sweet voice sounded on the phone. It was crisp and sounded like a well-hidden joy. Li Tianlan was a little confused. Huading, Zhongyuan, he had been flying back and forth these 2 days. In addition, he was in a trance, so he couldn't tell where he was for a while. He moved his body, and Qin Weibai, who was obediently held in his arms, also moved. Her small hands holding him also slightly tightened. Smelling the rich fragrance in the air, Li Tianlan's mind became clear. He said, "What's the matter?" "I'm on my way to Yonghua Villa. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Wang Yuetong giggled. The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, who seemed to be deeply shocked by Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai living together a day ago, seemed to be full of blood and blood. She said in a relaxed tone, "My father is now in Huading and he wants to see you. Wang Tianzong, the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan's mind was completely sober in an instant. He frowned slightly, but before he could speak, Wang Yuetong's sweet and clear voice continued to ring. "You have to see him, senior brother. You owe me." Beep beep beep. The phone was hung up. Li Tianlan held the phone in a daze for a while, shook his head and was ready to get up. However, as soon as he moved, Qin Weibai subconsciously stuck to him again. Feeling the smooth skin of the beauty beside him, Li Tianlan was excited again. Then he smiled bitterly and lowered his head to kiss Qin Weibai's face. Qin Weibai reached out her small hand and wiped her face. She murmured sleepily, "I'm so tired." Li Tianlan coughed awkwardly. He had indeed gone a little crazy last night. Qin Weibai's charm could really make people lose their minds. Every little expression and every little interest could make him lose control. The two of them tossed and turned until dawn before they fell asleep in a daze. When they woke up at this time, whether it was him or Qin Weibai, their spirits were a little overwhelmed. The sun was shining brightly outside. Li Tianlan lay back on the bed and sighed softly. In this kind of weather, it was the most comfortable to hold his beloved woman in bed. Even if they did nothing, it was much better than going out. Who called? Qin Weibai opened her eyes reluctantly. She wrapped herself around Li Tianlan and asked sleepily, "Wang Yuetong." Somehow Li Tianlan felt a little guilty. He coughed and said in a low voice, "Wang Tianzong came to Huading and said he wanted to see me." Qin Weibai's somewhat confused and lazy eyes suddenly focused, and she seemed to be thinking about something. "It's okay to see him. It's okay." After a moment of silence, she sat up from the bed and fetched some clothes for Li Tianlan. In Zhongzhou State, if the Sword Emperor wanted to see someone, he had to see him or not. Even if the Samsara and the Dongqing clan stood together, it would be useless. Besides, it was just a meeting. How big a deal could it be? Li Tianlan agreed and let Qin Weibai help him get dressed. In addition to being satisfied, he looked at her serious expression and even a little complacent. I wanted to spend some alone time with you today, but it seems that I can't. After the meeting, you should go back to the Sky Academy. It's a little unsafe outside now. I'll fly to Billy State in the afternoon or evening. It may be better when I come back. Qin Weibai tidied Li Tianlan's collar and said softly, "Is it dangerous?" Li Tianlan looked into Qin Weibai's eyes seriously and asked, "What kind of organization is Samsara? What are you going to do in Billy State?" Qin Weibai's bright eyes flickered and she said with a smile, "Samsara is Samsara Palace. Compared with super dark forces like the Wang family of Beihai, Samsara Palace can only be regarded as a rookie. Because of its small staff and simple organization, it has always been very mysterious in the eyes of the outside world. Samsara wants to narrow the gap with those super forces. Billy State is a very key step, and it is also something we have been planning recently. This time people will die, but I will be fine. My sister will protect me. She is an expert of the invincible realm. There are also strong and weak experts of the invincible realm." Li Tianlan said calmly, but he felt a little uneasy for no reason. It seemed that Qin Weibai's trip was very dangerous. "Don't worry, my sister is very strong. She is of the invincible realm on the divine list, and her ranking is very high. I'll introduce her to you someday and let her guide you in martial arts." Qin Weibai helped Li Tianlan get dressed and wrapped herself in the quilt again. She squinted and said with a smile, "During the time I'm not here, you behave yourself, okay?" Li Tianlan said yes, suddenly bent down, held Qin Weibai's head and kissed her hard. Qin Weibai whimpered, put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck and pulled him to the bed. After a long time their lips parted. Qin Weibai's face was red. She bit her lip and said with a low smile, "You are getting more and more barbaric. Go." Li Tianlan's cell phone rang again. He looked at the number, whispered, "Be careful," and turned to walk directly out of the bedroom. Outside the villa, Wang Yuetong's colorful blue Porsche was already parked at the door. She did not get out of the car. When she saw Li Tianlan coming out, she casually pressed the horn. Li Tianlan got in the car looking calm. "Senior brother, good morning." Smelling the delicate fragrance of a woman coming from Li Tianlan, Wang Yuetong's heart was sour, but her smile was still sweet. "Morning." Li Tianlan nodded. He was overworked last night, and now he was still a little tired and in a trance. "I prepared breakfast for you. Eat some first." Wang Yuetong pointed to the food bag on the center console and said, "The Porsche 718 could be said to be the entry-level version of the Porsche series. The internal storage space was so little that it made people want to cry. The food bag on the center console was an eyesore." Li Tianlan thanked her without hesitation. When Wang Yuetong drove out of the villa area, he also finished a cup of coffee and a burger. "Why does His Highness Sword Emperor want to see me?" Li Tianlan asked in a flat tone. Now he would not deliberately ignore Wang Yuetong, nor would he tease the most sensitive mind of the girl. But the alienation in his words was obvious. He clearly did not want to be too close to her. "Nothing. I just want to see you, the wind and thunder veins, and thank you for saving my life," Wang Yuetong said with a smile. Her big eyes blinked, pure and enchanting. Today she was dressed in a cartoon sweater, jeans and canvas shoes. She looked gentle and quiet, but combined with her enchanting temperament, she suddenly looked like a charming little goblin. Little goblin. Thinking of Qin Weibai's words, Li Tianlan smiled with soft eyes. "You don't have to thank me." He shook his head and said, "I've said it. We are even." "Even?" Wang Yuetong turned to look at Li Tianlan with burning eyes. "What about the debt with Ning Qianqing? I will pay it back as soon as possible." Li Tianlan turned to look out of the window and said coldly, "Where shall we meet?" "Garden party." Wang Yuetong's big eyes were slightly dim and she subconsciously sped up. This was the second time Li Tianlan came to the garden party. After parking the car, Wang Yuetong led the way without talking to Li Tianlan. She held her head high like a proud little swan. Li Tianlan was too lazy to guess and had no interest in guessing. Following the same route as last time, he went deep into the mysterious club and came to the pavilion where he met Shen Xuanzi last time. Wang Xiaoyao stood outside the pavilion with a gentle and quiet young man. Seeing Li Tianlan coming, no matter what he thought, he at least smiled. "Tianlan, we meet again." Since he was a guest, Wang Xiaoyao took the initiative to humble himself, reached out his hand and said with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Wang. Li Tianlan looked calm and shook hands with Wang Xiaoyao. A trace of rich and light fragrance went into Wang Xiaoyao's nostrils. Wang Xiaoyao was stunned for a moment, and then his whole face suddenly became stiff. Qin Weibai had a body fragrance that could not be replaced by any perfume. It was completely innate. He had been pursuing Qin Weibai for several years. Although he had never been able to get close to the goddess in his heart, Wang Xiaoyao remembered the rich and natural smell of the goddess clearly. It was even haunting. But now he could clearly smell the scent that belonged to Qin Weibai on Li Tianlan. At this moment Wang Xiaoyao's brain was roaring, and his heart seemed to be tightly clenched by a hand. It was so painful that he could hardly breathe. He held Li Tianlan's hand stiffly, and his breath was disordered. He could not say a word of the speech he had prepared. Second uncle. The young man beside Wang Xiaoyao coughed quietly. Wang Xiaoyao suddenly came to his senses and subconsciously let go of Li Tianlan. He forced a smile and looked a little lost. He turned around and looked at the clear pool under his feet. He took a deep breath, and his eyes were unprecedentedly gloomy. The young man looked at Wang Xiaoyao in surprise, and then smiled and reached out to Li Tianlan. "Hello, I'm Wang Xingxiao. Thank you for saving my sister." Wang Xingxiao. He ranked first among the top 10 experts of the young generation. He had wind and thunder veins and was known as the young heavenly sun. Li Tianlan's pupils contracted slightly, and he looked seriously at the heir of the Wang family of Beihai in front of him. Now he should be in the thunder-shocking realm, right? Hello. He held Wang Xingxiao's hand and kept his composure. Wang Xingxiao smiled warmly. His face was handsome and tough, and his temperament was modest and gentle. He looked more like a quiet and gentle young scholar, without any sharpness and arrogance of the young heavenly sun. "I heard from Yuetong that you have wind and thunder veins. We have the same physique. If you don't mind, I'll leave you my contact information later. How about we compare and learn from each other when we have time? Of course, we should not overdo it so as not to hurt our friendship. When there's a chance." Li Tianlan's smile was also very sincere, but only he knew what he was thinking in his heart. Do you regret not meeting each other earlier? In recent decades, only two people with wind and thunder veins have appeared in the dark world. Now we meet for the first time and you're so handsome. Senior brother, you're as handsome as my brother. Wang Yuetong giggled and her smile was cheerful. Wang Xingxiao's handsome face froze slightly. He looked at Li Tianlan, who looked ordinary and delicate at best. He smiled on the surface, but he was smiling bitterly in his heart. It was okay that their physiques were the same. But his silly sister said they were equally handsome. How much of his conscience did he have to say this? He let go of Li Tianlan's hand and touched his face subconsciously. "Since you're here, come in." A gentle voice rang out from the pavilion, neither fast nor slow. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat, and he looked up subconsciously. In the pavilion, a figure that wasn't very tall and sturdy was throwing fish food into the pond with his back facing them. It was a figure that looked very ordinary, even unremarkable. He scattered the fish food in his hand casually, neither fast nor slow. But in a trance he was connected with the whole pavilion. All the small bridges and flowing water around him seemed to have become a part of him. Li Tianlan did not move forward but slightly closed his eyes. Everything in front of him disappeared completely, and his sight was dark. In all of Li Tianlan's perception, there was no pavilion, no flowing water, and even Wang Xiaoyao and others had disappeared. In front of him, there was a vast and abundant momentum like the sky, like the sea. This was the real momentum of invincibility. It filled the world motionlessly, and when it moved, it was earth-shattering. Li Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes and took a deep breath. In a short time, his forehead was already covered with sweat. "You're good." In his sight, the figure in the pavilion had turned around and looked at Li Tianlan with a strange look in his eyes. The wind and thunder veins that have touched the road to invincibility are interesting. Li Tianlan exhaled the turbid air in his chest, subconsciously straightened up and whispered, "Sword Emperor." Wang Tianzong waved his hand and pointed to the stone table in the pavilion. Li Tianlan walked over and sat down, looking at Wang Tianzong without saying a word. The man in front of him, whose every move seemed ordinary but was actually like a dragon and a tiger, was likely to be the first person in the dark world in name or in fact. But Li Tianlan's heart was unprecedentedly calm and indifferent. "Your surname is Li?" Wang Tianzong looked at Li Tianlan with great interest. Li Tianlan's heart sank for no reason, but his expression did not change. He just nodded slightly. A young man who clearly wants to be even with the Wang family of Beihai, a young man who is highly valued by the Dongqing clan, a young man who can make Qin Weibai recommend herself to sleep with him, a young man who is highly valued by the academics, a young man who can use the 10th blade of vastness. Wang Tianzong's smile was still gentle. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was still calm in front of him. It's interesting, isn't it? How do you know? Even at this time, Li Tianlan's tone was still calm without any fluctuation. I heard from Yuetong how you saved him. The 24 moves of Sword of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun is a unique skill that runs through the entire map of God of War. But for hundreds of years, no one can use the 24 moves of sword except for the ancestor of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun who created the map of God of War. For hundreds of years, the gods of war of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun either practiced the balance manual or the peak manual. If they didn't practice the strongest invincible manual, the 24 moves of sword would be less elegant. Including the 10th blade, several moves in the 24 moves of sword belong to the domain of the invincible manual. Am I right? Wang Tianzong looked at Li Tianlan, his eyes becoming gentler. Yes. So how do you know? Li Tianlan still said calmly. The 10th blade of Boundless was the domain of the invincible manual. His ancestors couldn't use it at all. It could be said that this sword had never appeared in the world. It was incredible that Wang Tianzong could determine that it was the 10th blade based on Wang Yuetong's oral description. When the ancestor of Zhuanyuantai, who was also the first god of war of Zhongzhou state, created the 24 moves of sword, he integrated a set of punching techniques of your Shenyuan bloodline. At the same time, he also used some unique skills of the Wang family of Beihai for reference. There are some records of the 24 moves of sword in the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong said lightly. He looked at Li Tianlan and continued, I learned swordsmanship from Senior Li when I was a child. How is Senior Li now? Thanks to you I'm doing fine. Li Tianlan's tone was cold. From beginning to end, even when his identity was exposed by Wang Tianzong, he didn't show the slightest panic or shock. You have a good will. No wonder you dare to come to the Sky Academy. Wang Tianzong said thoughtfully, you practiced the invincible manual and once entered the fire-flaming realm. So you were defeated? So you had no choice but to practice again? Who did you lose to? Li Tianlan didn't say anything. He just looked at Wang Tianzong with cold eyes. It was not hostility, but a kind of alienation and indifference that he subconsciously wanted to keep a distance from. Wang Tianzong looked at him for a while, nodded and said softly, do you have a knot in your heart for the Wang family of Beihai? Because of what happened to your father? I can understand what you did. If I were you, I would do the same. So you don't need to explain? You can explain. The conversation between the two was getting faster and faster, and the atmosphere was getting more and more solemn. Wang Yuetong, who was beside them, had long been stunned. Senior brother Tianlan, was he the successor of the Li family? No wonder he wanted to be even with her. No wonder. She bit her lip tightly. Her mind was in a mess and she was at a loss for a moment. I'm the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said slowly. This was his explanation. It was empty but it explained everything. Li Tianlan seemed to understand but he also seemed not to understand. He just nodded coldly and said calmly, so I will die here today. At this moment he suddenly remembered what Great Master Wu Wei had said. He said that he would have a tribulation in the near future, but he did not expect that it would happen here. I won't kill you. Wang Tianzong shook his head. I don't think it was right for the silence of the Wang family of Beihai, but it was wrong to kill you. You won't die. But similarly I want to give you a suggestion. I'd like to hear the details. Li Tianlan nodded without any emotional fluctuation. Go back. The Sky Academy is not suitable for you. Wang Tianzong said indifferently. Li Tianlan smiled. He had been calm as if he would not be angry or afraid, but his momentum suddenly changed, and his eyes began to show a kind of madness and fierceness. Go back? Back to where? Back to the border? It's up to you. You can go back to the border or go abroad. It doesn't make sense for you to come here this time. The Li family no longer exists. Even if you enter the invincible realm, the Li family can't be glorious again. Zhongzhou state is no longer suitable for you. Wang Tianzong did not look at Li Tianlan and said slowly. Li Tianlan's smile became more and more crazy. His eyes seemed to be burning with a strong flame. Everyone could feel the heat and persistence in his eyes. You are the Sword Emperor, the best in the world, but you are not God. You can't control everyone's fate. So I won't go. I will take back everything the Li family lost little by little. You can't take anything away. Wang Qianzong's tone turned cold. This is no longer the era of the Li family. The era is created by people. Li Tianlan sneered and said, I want to have a try. You can't stop me. He hammered his chest with all his might. The force was so great that it felt like he was hammering his own soul. Blood gushed out of the corner of his mouth, but in addition to madness, there was only desperate determination in his eyes. I bet on the dignity and honor of the Li family. In the past 20 years, the lives and honor of nearly 1,000 people of the Li family are here, and they are all on me. You can't stop me. No one can stop me. Wang Tianzong turned to look at the pool outside the pavilion and said coldly, Then you can have a try. Li Tianlan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, nodded and said directly, Goodbye. He turned and left the pavilion without looking back. The atmosphere in the pavilion was oppressive and silent. Wang Yuetong, who had been in a daze, finally came to her senses. Looking at Li Tianlan's back, she screamed, Senior brother, and subconsciously rushed in the direction of Li Tianlan's departure. Wang Xingxiao frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Dad? Wang Tianzong shook his head and looked at his daughter who was chasing Li Tianlan. He said expressionlessly, You have the ambition of a wolf. You are not a good match. Thank you for the monthly ticket of Sword in the Zither. Chapter 80. It will be published tomorrow, please support me if you can. It only costs 6 or 7 yuan a month. Please subscribe. Li Tianlan's pace was not slow, but he was not running away in a panic. Therefore Wang Yuetong caught up with him after he had walked less than 100 or 200 meters. Li Tianlan turned around and looked at Wang Yuetong, who trotted over looking very young. He said calmly, What's the matter? These words were neither polite nor polite. They were so cold that they stabbed Wang Yuetong like a knife. Wang Yuetong's face suddenly turned pale. She bit her lips and whispered, Where are you going? Oh. After Li Tianlan said that, he felt a slight pain in his heart. Oh. Back to Yonghua Villa? Had Qin Weibai left for the airport? Could a villa without Qin Weibai be called home? He took out a cigarette and lit it. He took a deep breath and said flatly, Back to the Sky Academy. I'll go back with you. Wang Yuetong said and subconsciously took 2 steps forward, trying to grab Li Tianlan's arm. Li Tianlan stepped back and looked at her suddenly flustered face. He sighed softly and said, No need. Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. Beside them was a white bridge in green water. The warm morning sun shone down. Wang Yuetong seemed to be covered with a layer of gold. The young man and woman looked at each other silently, like a silent and sad picture. Li Tianlan turned around and left silently. Senior brother? Wang Yuetong opened her mouth and called out, almost muttering to herself. Senior brother? Wang Yuetong rushed up again. Her red lips were tightly pursed and her face was stubborn. With a kind of stubbornness, it seemed that she would not turn back until she hit the south wall. She held Li Tianlan's hands together and did not speak. It seemed that she wanted to act shamelessly again. Does it make any sense? Li Tianlan finally turned around and looked at Wang Yuetong. Now that you know who I am, you should also know that I didn't play hard to get with you before. It's just that our paths are different and we can't work together. He looked at Wang Yuetong's beautiful eyes, paused and continued, In fact, if you think about it carefully, there's nothing between us. You helped me in the entrance maneuver and I saved you outside the academy. There's nothing unforgettable or sentimental. I know my attitude may make you uncomfortable and unconvinced, but that's just an emotion. After a long time, there'll be nothing between us. Actually, I'm very selfish. When I say that I'm doing all this for your own good, even I feel that I'm being hypocritical. I really don't want to have anything to do with the Wang family of Beihai anymore. You should have heard it just now. As long as I'm alive, I'll get back everything the Li family lost sooner or later. Do you know what that means? Wang Yuetong did not speak or move. She just held Li Tianlan's hand and looked at him silently. Do you believe that I will enter the invincible realm one day? Li Tianlan suddenly asked with a firm expression. Wang Yuetong was stunned and nodded without hesitation. Her eyes were shining. There was no doubt about Li Tianlan's potential. The Li family's inheritance was also well known. The invincible manual in the map of God of War emphasized the state of mind the most. Li Tianlan might have been defeated, but after recultivating, his path could definitely be more stable than before. It was only a matter of time before such a person entered the invincible realm, the kind of invincible realm that could be ranked on the divine list. After seeing Li Tianlan's potential, no one doubted it. I also believe it. Li Tianlan smiled, patted Wang Yuetong's little hand and whispered, so, if I'm lucky enough to live to that day then we'll be enemies. Don't you understand? Looking at Wang Yuetong's pale face, Li Tianlan smiled and pulled his hand out of her hand little by little. He nodded and said, goodbye. He just turned around. Behind him, a delicate body suddenly rushed to him. Li Tianlan's body stiffened slightly. Wang Yuetong, who hugged him from behind, shook her head desperately and said with a crying voice, it's not like that. I'm not convinced. Li Tianlan, you bastard, why do you treat me like this? I found that I like you. I just fell in love with you and you let me fall out of love? Bastard, I just like you, just like you. Why can't you be nicer to me? There will be a way to solve the problem between the Li family and the Wang family. There must be a way. She just liked him, Li Tianlan's body stiffened in place. At this moment he was even at a loss. Wang Yuetong became more and more emotional. She held Li Tianlan's arms harder and harder, and she sobbed behind Li Tianlan without hiding it. It was very complicated to like someone and it might take a lifetime. It was also very simple to like someone and it only took a moment. Wang Yuetong didn't know when it started. In just a few days, Li Tianlan left a deep impression on her. He was calm, he was when he pulled out his sword, his silence, his indifference, his domineering attitude and countless Li Tianlan were more and more obvious in her heart. She could clearly recall Li Tianlan's every movement and expression, and even clearly remember every word he said. This man who had barged into her world when she was unprepared had unknowingly taken up residence in her heart. Not convinced? Maybe. Not convinced? It didn't matter. Wang Yuetong didn't want to know when it all started. She only knew that when Li Tianlan said that they would become enemies, her heart convulsed into a ball, and the pain was heart-wrenching. That was love. That was love. Li Tianlan stood quietly in place, feeling Wang Yuetong's increasingly strong hands. He frowned slightly and said, let go. I won't. Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlan tightly. The women of the Wang family of Beihai always dared to love and hate. They were not shy or pretentious. They would cry when they were sad or wronged and they would laugh when they were happy. When they met someone they liked they would not let go. Li Tianlan's face was cold. He grabbed Wang Yuetong's tender hands and pried them open little by little. The little princess's skin was so delicate that it seemed that a hard touch would leave a mark, but he hardened his heart and broke away from her embrace. Wang Yuetong didn't speak during the whole process, but she kept exerting force. Her face was red, and her tender hands were red and purple because of Li Tianlan's prying. She bit her lips hard and big drops of clear tears flowed out of her eyes. She was like a pear blossom in the rain, and her eyes were hazy with tears. But she didn't wipe them, just letting Li Tianlan become blurred in her sight. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong's red and purple hands, and his heart ached for no reason. But when he thought of the conversation with Wang Tianzong just now, his expression became cold again. Although he never had any hope after meeting Wang Tianzong, he clearly knew that everything between the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family, including the hundreds of years of friendship, was over. There was no going back. If he and Wang Yuetong were together 20 years ago, it would be a good story for the whole Southeast group. But today, 20 years later, they were together, which was an ill-fated relationship. Looking at Wang Yuetong's sad, helpless, and pitiful face, Li Tianlan's heart trembled slightly. He raised the corner of his mouth and suddenly smiled brightly. Since they couldn't be even and they couldn't even be strangers, then they should hate each other. It was much better than being entangled now. He stepped forward, reached out, and wiped the tears for Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong sobbed silently and stubbornly looked at Li Tianlan. Do you know what you look like now? Li Tianlan laughed softly and his tone was soft. His heart seemed to be slowly turning cold and there was no warmth in it. He thought that with Qin Weibai he could not care about any woman. He thought that for the Li family he could not care about anything. But in Wang Yuetong's sad and hazy eyes, Li Tianlan suddenly found that he would feel guilty, distressed, and struggled and tangled. You look like now, he whispered, and his whole body seemed to tremble unnaturally. You really look like a bitch. Wang Yuetong's body trembled violently, and her teary eyes seemed to become desperate. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, and the smile seemed to be a mask engraved on his face. You like me? It's strange. We've only known each other for a few days and you like me? If you're not a bitch, what are you? He removed his hands from Wang Yuetong's pale face and said calmly, I hate bitches the most, so, get away from me. Wang Yuetong froze in place. For a moment she seemed to become a flower without any vitality or water. Li Tianlan turned around and walked away quickly. Walking out of the garden party and along the road, the muscles around Li Tianlan's mouth kept twitching, and he became more and more angry. A gray Audi approached Li Tianlan and was about to slow down. Beep beep, the sound of the car horn sounded. Behind the Audi, a blue Porsche 718 rushed over quickly. The rider in the Audi smiled and sped up slightly. It was better to protect him secretly if he could. The Porsche stopped beside Li Tianlan and the window rolled down. Li Tianlan's heart seemed to explode for a moment. He restrained his emotions and looked at Wang Yuetong in the car. Wang Yuetong's face was still pale, but she seemed to have calmed down. She looked at Li Tianlan and said coldly, "Get in the car." Li Tianlan was stunned and opened the door to get in the car. Wang Yuetong started the car and drove fast. "Don't get me wrong. I won't continue to pester you. As you said, from now on we're even." The magma in Li Tianlan's heart was quickly extinguished after the violent surge. He nodded silently and said expressionlessly, "I can go back by myself. This is not in line with the etiquette of the Wang family of Beihai. Whether you are an enemy or not, at least now you are a guest of the Wang family of Beihai. I should send you back," Wang Yuetong said lightly. Her tone was empty and cold as if she had lost her soul. Li Tianlan stopped talking. In silence, the Porsche was getting faster and faster. It rushed into the city, out of the city, and gradually approached the Sky Academy. The last 2 kilometers of the Sky Academy was by water. There was only a small bridge for walking on the water. As the Porsche rushed all the way, the bridge was already in sight. "Senior brother." Wang Yuetong, who had been silent, suddenly spoke in a soft voice. Li Tianlan answered subconsciously. "I have imagined countless times what my first love would be like and how romantic and unforgettable it would be." She smiled gently, but tears fell from the corners of her eyes. "Now I have seen and experienced it. It turns out that all my fantasies are too beautiful. Do you know what it feels like to be called a bitch by someone you like?" she said softly, pointing at her heart with a red, purple and bruised little finger. "Here it's all broken." Li Tianlan's heart trembled, but he did not speak. "I don't like you anymore." Wang Yuetong smiled and cried. She said softly, "I hate you. Today, after getting off the car, we are enemies." The car passed through a forest and slowed down. In the gray Audi, which had been far behind the Porsche, Horsewoman held the phone and looked at the slowing Porsche in front of her. She whispered, "Boss, he will enter the Sky Academy soon." On the phone, Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and then said coldly, "You can come back. Come with me to Billy State later." At the same time, inside the dense forest, the black-robed man who had been lurking here took the recovery potion. Feeling his more and more flexible body and stronger power, his eyes became more and more ferocious and insidious. Beside the black-robed man, Rose turned on an instrument again. On the instrument screen, several red dots were flashing slightly. 2 people are protecting him in secret. Rose glanced at the screen and said calmly, "The one in the Audi is Horsewoman, 200 meters away. The one behind her is an expert of the Wang family of Beihai, who should be the enchantress protecting Wang Yuetong, 320 meters away." There was some surprise in her eyes. "Military counselor is not here. Does this instrument work?" The black-robed man moved his body and said lightly. With the support of the recovery potion, he had recovered his peak strength of the past, and the confidence in his words was more and more obvious. "Who knows? Test subject? But the old guy at the headquarters said it works. It is connected to the satellite and can accurately detect the life energy around you. How terrible is the life energy of a thunder-shocking realm expert? Now it only detects Horsewoman and the enchantress, but no third person. And the one closest to you is more than 200 meters away. More than 200 meters. The black-robed man looked at the Porsche less than 100 meters away from him and muttered to himself, too far, so far, how can you save him in time? How can you make it in time?" On the other side of the black-robed man, a slim woman wrapped in black tights put down the phone and came over. She said in a clear voice, "Do it. Rose and I will hold off the enchantress and Horsewoman. The black-robed man kill Li Tianlan and seriously injure Wang Yuetong. This is the second master's order. Give me 10 seconds. That's enough." The black-robed man sneered. In his sight, Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan opened the door and got out of the car. They walked together and stretched out their hands. It seemed to be a very formal handshake. The black-robed man didn't hesitate. He rushed out of the woods like a black eagle. Lightning flashed and thunder roared inside and outside the woods. A large amount of dazzling lightning burst out. The black-robed man's figure seemed to have become blurred in the lightning all over the sky. Horsewoman, who was ready to turn the car around, changed her face dramatically. She broke through the windshield in the car and sprinted forward at full speed. In the rear, the enchantress, who was a little slower, also noticed the situation. She was like a phantom charging at full speed. Two slender and plump female figures rushed out of the woods behind the black-robed man. Both of them were wrapped in black clothes. They tried their best to stop the rescue of Horsewoman and the enchantress. In an instant, the dazzling lightning shattered the nearby woods. The four masters at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm fought with all their strength, risking their lives. On the other side, the black-robed man had rushed to Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. The lightning spread wildly. At this moment, the black-robed man didn't defend but attacked with all his strength. The sword of the heavenly son of the Li family at the border 20 years ago seemed to reappear in his mind. The soaring sword light surged in his heart. The black-robed man's eyes were crazy. The lightning around him gathered, and his momentum increased again. The hearts of Horsewoman and the enchantress sank to the bottom in an instant, and they were cold all over. Just by looking at the momentum, they knew that the black-robed man was an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm who was not much weaker than them. If such a person attacked in person, no matter how talented Li Tianlan was, no matter how noble Wang Yuetong was, how could they be spared? Some were angry, some were looking forward to it, and some were crazy. The lightning was approaching. It was getting closer and closer. Everything happened in an instant. Looking at the lightning that could easily tear her apart countless times, Wang Yuetong only had time to turn her head slightly. It seemed not bad to die with this man. In Wang Yuetong's sight, Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. The dazzling lightning illuminated his face into a livid color. He didn't flinch but stepped forward in the face of the lightning. The man who had just said that he was selfish reached out, grabbed Wang Yuetong and pulled her behind him. Wang Yuetong suddenly burst into tears. Vaguely, she seemed to hear Li Tianlan muttering to himself, "So this is the tribulation." The black-robed man who was covered with lightning swooped down. The lightning surrounded him like the grim smile of death. The silver human emperor slipped from the cuff. It was a close call. Li Tianlan held the human emperor tightly and pulled it gently. A slender double sword was unsheathed. Li Tianlan raised the sword with both hands over his head. Above the ninth heaven, thunder was about to strike. The rolling thunder was like the wrath of heaven. "I have a sword." Under the invincible realm, the enemy was a non-entity, and I was a non-entity. Li Tianlan's heart was unprecedentedly united. He once told Dongqing Wudi that he had a sword that the Zhong family and the Tan family couldn't handle. But what he didn't say was that he couldn't handle it either. It was nothing more than a life-and-death struggle. Li Tianlan's long sword trembled. In the blink of an eye, all his essence, qi and spirit flew up like never before. All his vitality and potential began to burn with the trembling of his long sword. He entered the ice-condensing realm, the fire-flaming realm, and the thunder-shocking realm. At this moment, Li Tianlan was calm and majestic. Demons and ghosts retreated. This was the strongest sword in his life. Even when he had just entered the thunder-shocking realm, he couldn't use it. This was the domain of the invincible manual. How could a sword at the cost of life not be strong? The 21st blade. The shattering of land. The almost invincible lightning rose from the tip of the sword. Li Tianlan's body was straight, but his hair suddenly turned white. Chapter 81. Please subscribe. I only need 6 or 7 yuan a month at most. It's just the price of a pack of cigarettes. Please support me as much as you can, thank you. The wind blew and the clouds moved. There was a sudden thunder. No one could describe this sword move. The sword light seemed to turn into thunder, rising from the tip of the sword and rushing to the sky hundreds of meters high. In the surging wind and surging clouds, the whole world seemed to be connected in a line in an instant. This was not a sword move at all, but a momentum that seemed to burst out crazily. This was a sword move at the cost of life, the most extreme sublimation and release of essence, qi and spirit. Li Tianlan's expression was calm, his eyes were dead and gray, and the light also became dim. This sword move seemed to have gone through decades of time. His hair turned white in an instant. His face did not change, but he gave people a feeling that he had completely aged and was almost non-existent. Only the overwhelming sword qi was still raging and surging. It was endless. The lightning in front of the black-robed man was like a firefly in front of the bright moon, dim and lightless. He was still sprinting at full speed, but his pupils contracted completely, and his expression was terrified. In front of him, Li Tianlan seemed to have completely disappeared. In all his senses, there was only a sword that seemed to be able to easily smash everything in the world. The majestic sword intent appeared suddenly like a storm, but it was natural. With Li Tianlan as the center, all the air around him began to twist and shake like never before. Li Tianlan stood with his sword, but his whole body became more and more erratic. The world was in front of him. I was outside the world. 21st Blade, the shattering of land. This was not a simple move, but more of a kind of spirit and momentum that went forward bravely, fearlessly, ignored defense, and dared to smash everything. He concentrated everything on the sword and really, completely broke out. At this moment, when he was still fearless in a desperate situation, Li Tianlan suddenly realized the meaning of the existence of this sword move. Kill the enemy, kill himself, shatter the mountains and rivers, shatter the world, and go forward. Everything happened in an instant. The thunder light between heaven and earth was completely formed. Wang Yuetong, who was behind him, suddenly took a step forward and gently but firmly hugged him from behind. She chuckled and said, "I'm being cheap again, but I'm willing." No. In the distance, the enchantress's almost heart-wrenching scream suddenly sounded. The sound came through the air. The sword light could topple mountains and overturn oceans. The figures of Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong had completely turned into lightning. The sword intent between heaven and earth condensed, carrying the pride and majesty of the Li family for hundreds of years. The figure of the black-robed man had already appeared in front of Li Tianlan. In the face of the majestic sword light that almost reached the invincible realm, he had no choice and his eyes became more and more crazy. He attacked. The sword light fell. Seal. In the distant sky, a low voice suddenly sounded. The voice was not loud, but it seemed to reverberate in the depths of everyone's heart. It was low and hoarse, like the mumbling of the Grim Reaper. Everything in the surroundings seemed to freeze in an instant. All of a sudden, the figures of Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong became clear, as if they had lost contact with the sword intent of the shatter of land. The lightning on Black Robe's body also stopped for a moment. The black-robed man was not surprised but happy, even ecstatic. He could not see anything behind him, but Li Tianlan was only 3 meters away from him. Now he felt that Li Tianlan seemed to be temporarily disconnected from the sword. This was simply the best opportunity for him. It would only take 1 second to kill him and escape unscathed. The lightning around Black Robe suddenly expanded. Without hesitation he attacked with all his strength. Instant. The deep and hoarse voice in the distance softly murmured again. Between Black Robe and Li Tianlan, within 2 meters, a black shadow suddenly appeared. This was a pure shadow, which seemed to be completely distorted by the air. The shadow was just a human silhouette, dark all over, but its arms were almost transparent, leaving only a trace of black. The shadow was lifeless with a clear smell of death. Hundreds of meters away, a similarly dark figure appeared behind Black Robe. The lightning in the air instantly expanded to the limit. After a short pause, Li Tianlan's sword light rose again with more momentum. But Black Robe completely ignored the sword light. His eyes were fixed on the black shadow in front of him, and his eyes were horrified as if he had seen a ghost. Tribulation. His body stiffened in place and he suddenly screamed, "Kill!" The low and hoarse voice continued to ring, but it became more and more gloomy and cold. Behind Black Robe, 100 meters away, the black figure raised its palm. The shadow in front of Black Robe raised its hand at the same time. The figure rushed to Black Robe. The black shadow also rushed to Black Robe. The shadow rushed through the body of the black-robed man. The figure in the distance suddenly disappeared and appeared directly in front of Li Tianlan. The shadow that rushed into the body of the black-robed man exchanged places with him and appeared where he had been just now. This was the true shifting shadows. It was dazzling and made one's scalp go numb. A dark figure stood in front of Li Tianlan, facing him with a serious look in his eyes. Behind him, all the lightning disappeared and Black Robe's figure stopped where he was. Blood mist rushed out of his body all over the sky. His eyes were wide open and he shook and fell to the ground, dying with everlasting regret. Instant kill. Black Robe said that it would take less than 10 seconds to kill Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong. But this man in black who suddenly appeared killed Black Robe in less than 1 second. This was a silent and strange man. A silver mask covered his face so that his appearance could not be seen. He was slightly short, no more than 1.7 meters tall at most. His body was thin and looked very inconspicuous. But at this moment he stood in front of Li Tianlan with killing intent all over his body. In addition to weirdness, there was only extreme sharpness in him. Defend. Feeling that the sword in front of him was completely out of Li Tianlan's control, Black Robe's eyes focused and he spoke again. Everyone knew what the consequences of this sword would be. This was definitely not the result he wanted. As soon as the word came out, 4 shadows appeared around Black Robe again. 4 black shadows rushed in 4 directions, and all the air in all directions suddenly twisted violently. There was no thunder, no raging fire, and no ice. After the harsh sound, there was a crazy surging air wave whistling like a tide. All the air was twisted in a visible form and gathered in Li Tianlan's direction. On the other battlefield, whether horsewoman, enchantress, rose, or moonlight, the lightning around everyone began to flicker, and it became weaker and weaker in the turbulence of the air. Let's go. Moonlight's expression changed. She looked at Black Robe's body on the ground and pulled Rose to break out of the encirclement without hesitation. Black Robe standing in front of Li Tianlan did not stop them. He just stared at Li Tianlan in front of him and his eyes became more and more serious. Horsewoman and enchantress hesitated, gritted their teeth and rushed to Li Tianlan. Stop. Black Robe's low and hoarse voice sounded, and his tone was gloomy. Horsewoman and enchantress were stunned and stood still. The man in front of them could be said to be a famous madman in the whole dark world. He was the only person with double wind veins in Zhongzhou State for hundreds of years, the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State, and also the deputy governor of Sai City, Tribulation. In anyone's view, Tribulation could be said to be a real invincible talent. According to the evaluation of Wang Tianzong of the Wang family of Beihai, if this person had not gone astray, he would have entered the invincible realm, and even could have been on the divine list. But Tribulation gave up his so-called talent and took a path that many people thought was a wrong one. His martial arts did not enter the ice-condensing realm, fire-flaming realm, or thunder-shocking realm. For many years, his realm had stayed in the chi-controlling realm, and he studied tirelessly in the chi-controlling realm. He broke through the limit of the chi-controlling realm again and again. Now few people said that Tribulation was the strongest in the chi-controlling realm. Whether in combat strength or means, he had far exceeded the limit of the chi-controlling realm. No one knew how far he had gone on the road from the chi-controlling realm to the invincible realm, even he himself did not know. Such a figure suddenly appeared here and saved Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong, which meant that he had no malice. Otherwise, how could Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong be alive? Enchantress and horsewoman looked at each other and stood still, waiting. A large amount of air gathered toward Tribulation with the movement of the black shadow and was twisted and compressed into a visible form. The sword light in Li Tianlan's hand was still shining, but his whole body seemed to be frozen. He could not lift the long sword in his hand, nor could he cut down. Countless air was compressed by Tribulation and piled up around him. There were more and more, and the shape became more and more obvious. Tribulation kept moving. An oval formed by compressed air had gradually appeared around Li Tianlan, like a giant cocoon. Clouds of vague and twisted air compressed by Tribulation piled up around Li Tianlan. His and Wang Yuetong's figures gradually became blurred, and only a dazzling lightning was still shining in the air. Destroy. Tribulation's eyes narrowed slightly under the mask and he spoke softly. Boom. The air around Li Tianlan suddenly surged and exploded. The air whistled and the lightning flashed. With Li Tianlan as the center, a large wave of air flew up in an instant. Tribulation's figure flashed, and he had already exchanged places with the shadow in the distance. He watched all this silently, frowning. The wave of air rolled over the dust and swept through the woods. The dense sword intent directly raised the woods within dozens of meters to the ground, and the dust was flying. In the air there was still a large amount of lightning surging with the air around Li Tianlan, entangling with each other. This sword is no longer under Li Tianlan's control. If he uses it he will die. Tribulation wants to force this sword back. This lunatic. Enchantress muttered to herself. What will be the result? Horsewoman asked subconsciously. She was responsible for protecting Li Tianlan, but the object of her protection became like this. Horsewoman's face was pale and she was a little scared. Who knows? This kind of thing has never happened before. The best result should be that he can survive and Li Tianlan will be half disabled, right? Enchantress shook her head and said absent-mindedly. She was obviously worried about Wang Yuetong now. Horsewoman's body shook slightly. At the thought of the boss's possible thunderous rage, her scalp went numb. The lightning and the air were wearing away around Li Tianlan. In the distance, Tribulation suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes grew colder and colder and he opened his mouth again. Stop. The lightning stagnated again. Countless air masses surged violently and quickly dissipated. The dazzling lightning immediately became dimmer. The air masses dissipated, and the figure of Li Tianlan, whose hair was already white, gradually became clear. Wang Yuetong stood beside him, tears falling like rain. The shining lightning finally dissipated. A large number of air masses also disappeared completely. Li Tianlan, whose hair was white, knelt on the ground on one knee and spat out a mouthful of blood. Senior brother. Wang Yuetong's voice was frightened and desperate. She didn't know how terrifying the sword just now was, but Li Tianlan was only in the qi-controlling realm. How could he not pay a price for such a terrible sword? Wang Yuetong didn't even dare to think about what the price was. The blood spat out from Li Tianlan's mouth was strangely red, which was dazzling and mournful. Tribulation's body moved slightly, and he switched places with his shadow again, appearing beside Li Tianlan. That sword was so horrible that I could barely suppress 70% of it. How are you now? Tribulation looked at Li Tianlan calmly and asked. Li Tianlan shook his head in silence, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "Thank you. We're on the same side. Don't mention it." Tribulation's voice softened a little. I'm Tribulation, the Deputy Governor of Sai City, and also the Deputy Director of the Teaching Office of the Sky Academy this term. I'm in charge of the assassination course. Not far away, the enchantress, who clearly heard all this, trembled slightly, and her rushing footsteps also stopped. The Deputy Director of the Teaching Office of the Sky Academy this term in charge of the assassination course? How could Zhuang Huayang invite this great master who he couldn't suppress at all? Li Tianlan was also stunned. The Deputy Governor of Sai City, one of his own, he smiled. It seemed that he didn't have to worry about the position of Sai City, which seemed to be a good thing, but now he couldn't be happy in any way. How are you now? Looking at the white-haired Li Tianlan, Tribulation's eyes flashed, and he asked again with a hint of concern in his tone that he didn't even notice. In this short time he even talked more than he usually did in a week. Li Tianlan just silently reached out his hand. In his palm the air was slightly twisted, and a dazzling thunderbolt bloomed in his hand, gorgeous and dazzling. Li Tianlan looked at the thunderbolt in his palm, and smiled absent-mindedly and bitterly. Under the mask, no one could see Tribulation's expression, but his eyes completely changed. At the same time, the enchantress and horsewoman changed their expressions. How could you still be in the thunder-shocking realm? Didn't you suppress it with that sword strike? Horsewoman opened her mouth subconsciously. Her voice trembled and her face became extremely ugly. After that sword strike, Li Tianlan was still in the thunder-shocking realm, which was definitely not a good thing. After all, this was not his own realm. His physical strength still stayed in the qi-controlling realm. What did this mean? It meant that Li Tianlan's body could completely collapse at any time because it couldn't bear the power of the thunder-shocking realm. Maybe in the next second, maybe in the next minute. Li Tianlan stood up gently, nodded to Tribulation and said again, "Thank you." Tribulation was silent and didn't say a word. Li Tianlan gently turned around and looked at the Sky Academy on the other side of the water in silence. Only he knew exactly his current physical condition. The shattering of land. After all, Tribulation couldn't completely suppress that sword strike. With the release of sword energy, his vitality was also released. It was almost impossible to suppress that sword strike. It was a miracle that Tribulation could suppress it. But how could he suppress his realm if he didn't completely suppress it? Now Li Tianlan still had one foot in the qi-controlling realm, but the other foot had stepped into the thunder-shocking realm. One foot in the qi-controlling realm, the other foot in the thunder-shocking realm. Such a situation had never happened in Zhongzhou State for hundreds of years. Announcing this reader group, 670548567. You can come here to discuss the plot. I'll inform you as soon as there's an update, and I'll tell you in advance if it's late. I'm always on call in the group. Chapter 82. Please subscribe, 6 or 7 yuan a month. Those who can afford it, please subscribe, take a break and continue to write the third chapter. I won't sleep until I finish it. Brothers, you can get up tomorrow morning to read it. It will probably be late at night. Well, how about 3 chapters tomorrow? The rolling Yangtze River flowed under his feet and rushed to the estuary not far away. As the river flowed, the lofty sentiments flowed away. Standing on the opposite bank of the Sky Academy and looking at the river, no matter how you looked at it, It seemed to give people a feeling of a hero past his prime. The rushing river flowed into the sea, moving forward and never coming back, like youth passing away in a hurry. Looking back, everything that seemed to be near yesterday turned out to be far away, empty and blurred. Li Tianlan stood quietly on the shore, staring at the Sky Academy opposite and the rolling river in front of him. He said nothing and remained silent for a long time. One step was in the chi-controlling realm, and the other was in the thunder-shocking realm. At this moment, it could be said that he was the strongest in his life. He dared to fight with anyone under the invincible realm. But it was also the most lonely time for him. The contradictory feeling of emptiness and expansion in his body kept alternating. From top to bottom at this moment, Li Tianlan felt like an inflated balloon. It seemed to be expanding, but it was empty inside. It was power that was expanding. It was life that was empty. The afternoon sun was just right, and the flowers were blooming in the warm spring weather. In the refreshing weather, there was a sudden gust of wind and the wind drifted away with the river. Li Tianlan's white hair rose slightly with the wind, and a few pale and lusterless hairs fell down in the wind. They crossed the sight of several people present and finally fell in front of Wang Yuetong. At this moment, everyone could feel Li Tianlan's extremely abnormal strength, but they could also clearly feel his fragility. Under that powerful momentum, his body seemed to be vulnerable. It seemed that if the wind was stronger, his body would be directly shattered by the wind and dissipate between heaven and earth. Senior brother. Wang Yuetong's tears, which had been stopped, suddenly broke down like a broken dam. She cried and walked to Li Tianlan's side, trembling and saying, "Why is this happening? Why is this happening?" Li Tianlan continued to be silent. Wang Yuetong covered her mouth tightly, and tears instantly wet the back of her white and tender hands. The girl, who did not cry even when Li Tianlan called her a bitch not long ago, trembled and cried miserably. Not only Wang Yuetong, but also Horsewoman and the Enchantress were suffering. He possessed the wind and thunder veins and had entered the thunder-shocking realm at a young age. How terrifying was his potential. In time, after entering the invincible realm, he would definitely be a strong contender for the top 5 or even the top 3 on the divine list. Even the Enchantress, who favored Wang Xingxiao in her heart, had to admit that Li Tianlan would become a young heavenly son, and even one of the most powerful contenders for the title of heavenly son. But now, with the end of that stunning sword, all of that no longer existed. Li Tianlan was still alive. But the prodigy had already fallen. How long could he live in this state? Even if he could live for a long time, did he still have anything to do with the invincible realm after burning all his potential and vitality? He would never reach the invincible realm. How cruel was that for a person like Li Tianlan? Looking at the back of the white-haired, desolate and lonely figure, the Enchantress was silent, and her heart seemed to be a little sad. No matter how unwilling I am, what can I do? Li Tianlan looked at the river and finally spoke. His voice was very low, as if he was muttering to himself, "What can I do?" This was the second time he said this. The first time he said it, he was in the opposite Sky Academy. At that time, when he asked himself this question, the answer in his heart was extremely clear. But this time, when he asked himself again, there was only confusion left. Senior brother. Wang Yuetong, who was trembling and crying, carefully took Li Tianlan's hand and sobbed. "Come back to the Wang family of Beihai with me. I have a way to save you. I must have a way to save you." Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell visibly. He inhaled and exhaled. It seemed that all the unwillingness and resentment rushed out of his body along with his breath. His pale face, which was almost transparent, became calm again. Looking at Wang Yuetong, whose voice was hoarse and whose delicate red lips were bleeding, Li Tianlan said softly, "Have you forgotten?" He pointed to his chest and said softly, "We are enemies." Wang Yuetong shook her head desperately, and her voice was sad. The sincerity that seemed to have been torn by Li Tianlan seemed to be closed again when Li Tianlan stood in front of her, and then was once again broken by Li Tianlan's white hair. What dignity! What pride! What reserve and nobility! She didn't want it anymore. Wang Yuetong didn't want anything. She just wanted Li Tianlan to be alive, to see him in high spirits, even if she saw his indifference and indifference again. No matter if they were enemies or friends, no matter if they were acquaintances or strangers in the future, as long as he was alive, it was okay. Facing Li Tianlan's calm and indifferent eyes, Wang Yuetong took another step forward and held his body tightly. She said in a hoarse voice, "Please, senior brother, I beg you, come back to the Wang family of Beihai with me. I was wrong. I don't hate you, okay? I beg you. I was wrong, I beg you. Li Tianlan's eyes became hot, and his heart twitched violently. A great sorrow hit his heart and his eyes were dim. He was almost out of breath. How much did she care about him that she admitted her mistake without dignity? How much did she care about him that she begged so boldly? She didn't do anything wrong. Why should she admit her mistake? Why should she beg? She was the youngest daughter of the young generation of the Wang family of Beihai who was most favored by Wang Tianzong. Li Tianlan could clearly feel his heart twitching violently. At this moment Wang Yuetong wouldn't know how much the man she loved and hated wanted to hold her in his arms, and Li Tianlan didn't want her to know. She had the persistence and enthusiasm to love and hate, but she might not have the courage to bear some things. Li Tianlan clenched his palms so hard that blue veins stood out on his bloodless arms. He reached out his hands but not to hug her. Instead he firmly pushed Wang Yuetong away. The little princess lost her balance and suddenly fell to the ground. "Bitch, get away from me." Li Tianlan's face was cold, but his heart was like a valley full of cold wind and bitterness. With the wind swirling, the whole empty valley seemed to be cold, cold and mocking. Wang Yuetong sat on the ground in a daze, with tears streaming down her face. Her eyes, which were usually pure and enchanting, were red and swollen from crying. There was no anger or sadness in her eyes, only pleading. "You will die, senior brother, you will die. Die." When she said this word, Wang Yuetong only felt that she had no strength in her body, and she couldn't even get up for a while. She just lay on the ground and kept muttering to herself, repeating, "You will die." Li Tianlan turned his head and didn't look at her. The enchantress, who saw all this with her own eyes, suddenly flew into a rage. She was one of the core experts of the Wang family of Beihai and had a very good relationship with Wang Yuetong. They were like sisters and mothers. The enchantress loved and even spoiled Wang Yuetong from the bottom of her heart. Not to mention touching her, even if someone said something bad about Wang Yuetong, the enchantress would turn hostile and kill her. But now the little princess, whom she treasured very much, was pushed to the ground by Li Tianlan and abandoned like grass. He even called her a bitch and asked her to get away from him. The eyes of the enchantress immediately turned a demonic blood red. Lightning flashed on her body. She suddenly took a step forward and stared at Li Tianlan's back. She narrowed her eyes and said in a dangerous tone, "Li Tianlan, help Yuetong up now and apologize to her. Otherwise I'll make you regret it. Do you believe me?" Horsewoman hesitated. Although she didn't speak, she had already made a gesture to stop her. "I won't apologize." The indifference in Li Tianlan's voice perfectly concealed the trembling in his voice. "She is bitch." "What did I say wrong? Who do you think you are? How dare you insult the princess of the Wang family of Beihai?" The enchantress took a deep breath and tried her best to adjust her state. It was hard enough for her to deal with a horsewoman, not to mention Li Tianlan, who was in the thunder-shocking realm and whose power was unknown. But the enchantress was fearless. Neither her position nor her concern for Wang Yuetong allowed her to take a step back at this time. "He is nothing." Tribulation, who had been silent all this time as if he didn't exist at all, suddenly opened his mouth. His voice was low and hoarse, not cold but absolutely oppressive. "He is the young governor of Sai City and the future governor." The enchantress, "Who do you think you are? How dare you be rude to the young governor? Don't get involved in the quarrel of young people." Sai City. The young governor. The enchantress's body shook violently. She was about to take a step forward, but she froze in place and couldn't move. The decision was so hasty and incredible, but when it was said by Tribulation, people had to believe it. In everyone's mind, Tribulation was the future governor of Sai City, and only he was qualified to be the future governor. He was the most amazing assassin in Zhongzhou State for hundreds of years. Tribulation's existence was even the belief of many killers. He broke through to the invincible realm at the Qi-controlling realm. He created the Buddhist incantation of 9 words and vowed to be on par with the Buddhist incantation of 9 words of Taoism and Buddhism. What kind of courage and talent was this? If he could really enter the invincible realm from the Qi-controlling realm, even Situ Tsangyue couldn't suppress him. Such a person gave up the position of governor and would rather stand behind Li Tianlan? Why on earth? The enchantress took a deep breath. She had to move forward. Even if she knew she was no match for Tribulation, she didn't want to give in at all. "Do you want to stop me? Go away." Before Tribulation could speak, Wang Yuetong suddenly screamed in a helpless and desolate voice. The enchantress was stunned and stopped where she was. She looked at Wang Yuetong with sad eyes. Wang Yuetong got up from the ground and glanced at Li Tianlan in a daze. Then she suddenly turned around and ran away without looking back. The enchantress glanced at Li Tianlan coldly and followed her without hesitation. Li Tianlan still stood by the river, motionless like a statue. Whether it was the young governor of Sai City or the provocation of the enchantress, he didn't seem to hear them. The news, which was enough to shake Zhongzhou State, seemed to be blown away by the wind and disappeared in his ears. Tribulation glanced at Li Tianlan with some appreciation in his eyes. He was an assassin, but he was not an emotionless machine. The relationship between men and women was difficult and entangled. To put it simply, it was nothing more than an apology or a confession. When he came, he saw Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan hugging each other with his own eyes. A girl who was willing to die with him. No matter what happened before, it was all in the past. It was because it was over that he should cherish it more. He could understand Li Tianlan's indifference, and he believed that the enchantress could also understand it. At this time, pushing Wang Yuetong away was exactly the most responsible thing to do. He had the courage to push Wang Yuetong away, but he didn't have the courage to let Wang Yuetong accept the separation of life and death. Wang Yuetong said that the Wang family of Beihai had a way to save Li Tianlan. There might be such a way, but it was definitely not something that Wang Yuetong could get, unless Li Tianlan sold his life to the Wang family of Beihai in the future. And the possibility was not too big. At least in Tribulation's heart, this young man's cold words were very manly. Sadness, even hatred, was much better than the heartbreak when they parted, right? For example, his sister, the governor of Sai City. Tribulation's eyes were in a trance. He looked at Li Tianlan and was about to speak. On the other side of the river, an elderly figure was already rushing over along the bridge. It was Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy. Tribulation stood where he was, calm and collected. Zhuang Huayang, who noticed the battle on the shore, rushed over almost immediately. Looking at the end of the battle and Li Tianlan, who had white hair and a strong but empty aura, Zhuang Huayang's heart suddenly sank, but he still asked, "What's going on?" Li Tianlan didn't speak. Tribulation didn't speak either. Horsewoman, who was distracted, didn't bother to say anything. Zhuang Huayang's heart kept sinking to the bottom. The white hair was a sign of excessive burning of life and potential. What did it mean? Hopeless and invincible. Zhuang Huayang's heart trembled slightly. The academics had finally found Li Tianlan, the most valuable person to cultivate. Was it going to lose him? If so, what would the academics' attitude toward Li Tianlan in the future? Zhuang Huayang didn't want to think too much and didn't dare to think too much. He just said, "Let's go back to the Sky Academy first." "I'm not going back." Li Tianlan finally spoke. He stared deeply at the Sky Academy on the other side of the river and said slowly, "It's meaningless." He slowly turned around and walked away. "Where are you going?" Zhuang Huayang and Tribulation said in unison. "Home," Li Tianlan said lightly. A black Mercedes-Benz rushed to the river at almost full speed. The bright car ignored the obstacles in the battlefield, roared and finally stopped near Li Tianlan. The door opened and Qin Weibai got out of the car in a hurry. When she saw Li Tianlan with white hair, she was stunned as if struck by lightning. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai quietly. The corner of his mouth twitched, and his eyes suddenly turned red in front of his woman. His tone was no longer indifferent and calm, but with a kind of unconcealable bitterness. He said in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'll let you down in the future." Qin Weibai, who was dressed in formal clothes, trembled slightly. She clenched her fists tightly, and her nails pierced into her palms. In an instant, blood gushed out. She took a deep breath and slowly came to Li Tianlan. Her eyes were still gentle. "Boss." Horsewoman came to Qin Weibai with some uneasiness and called her softly. Slap. Qin Weibai suddenly swung her hand and slapped Horsewoman hard in the face. Horsewoman's tall and plump body staggered backward. She didn't dare to resist at all, just bowed her head and said nothing. Her face was stained with the blood of Qin Weibai's hand, but she didn't wipe it. She just stood quietly. "I don't want to listen to your explanation. Get back in the car and come with me." Qin Weibai's voice was still cold, but there was a kind of almost irrepressible madness and rage in her words. Horsewoman said nothing and directly got into the Mercedes-Benz. "I don't blame her. Really." Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and explained in a low voice. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan again. Both her eyes and her tone became unprecedentedly gentle. "Do you trust me?" Li Tianlan nodded without hesitation. Qin Weibai raised the corner of her mouth and smiled brightly. She put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck and kissed him gently on the corner of his mouth. She whispered, "You'll be fine. Wait for me to come back." She took 2 steps back, took a deep look at Li Tianlan, and turned to the Mercedes-Benz. When she opened the door, Qin Weibai glanced at Zhuang Huayang, who was walking over, and said in a cold voice, "Zhuang Huayang, tell the chief behind you that in half a month, at most half a month, I'll return you a good Tianlan. During this time you'd better not have any evil thoughts." She sat in the car and said calmly, "Go to Billy's state right now." Flaming Fire, who was driving, responded and started the car. The car suddenly sped up. There was a dead silence in the car. Qin Weibai sat alone in the back row. She pressed her lips tightly and her dark and calm eyes flickered slightly. It was determination and madness at all costs. Thank you 54472292 Killer AK for your support. Chapter 83. Zhuang Huayang took a deep breath and slowly turned around until his figure disappeared from his sight. The battlefield was in a mess. The neat path was completely destroyed. The woods on both sides of the road were in disorder. Countless branches and broken trunks were scattered everywhere. Zhuang Huayang walked indifferently and finally stopped in front of Tribulation. "Don't you follow him and protect him secretly?" Zhuang Huayang asked casually. There were several top assassins in Sai City, and they were all suitable candidates for the assassination course of the Sky Academy. Zhuang Huayang didn't even expect Breeze and Drifting Cloud to join him when he first communicated with Sai City, let alone Tribulation, the deputy governor. After all, Sai City had been at peace with the world for many years. No one was interested in intervening in affairs outside the Northeast. Situ Tsangyue was such a character, so Zhuang Huayang didn't expect her to send her right-hand man Breeze and Drifting Cloud to the Sky Academy. His target was the other assassins, who were slightly inferior to Breeze and Drifting Cloud but qualified to represent Sai City. For example, Demon, Wangliang, Void Abyss, and Sunset Shadow. Any one of these 4 was qualified for the position in the Sky Academy, and they were more than enough. They were the real targets of Zhuang Huayang's invitation. In recent years, the academics in Sai City had been relatively close. If the 4 assassins came to the Sky Academy, it was enough to show that the cooperation between Sai City and the academics had become closer. For both sides, such cooperation was a complete win-win. Kunlun City had been playing dirty tricks on Sai City in recent years. Situ Tsangyue's setting sun, the murderous weapon of Zhongzhou State, was what Gu Xingyun, the god of war, dreamed of and also his biggest plot in recent years. Even Gu Yunxia's speech at the entrance ceremony of the Sky Academy was part of Kunlun City's operation. If there were no twists and turns in the Sky Academy, it was estimated that her speech would soon spread to Yuzhou and then to the northeast. However, her words were directly blocked by Zhuang Huayang, and the influence of her speech had been greatly reduced. Zhuang Huayang invited the assassins of Sai City to the Sky Academy, which was tantamount to testing the possibility of Sai City fighting back against Kunlun City's increasing small tricks in recent years. If the assassins of Sai City joined the Sky Academy, it would be the first time that Sai City went out of the Northeast since its establishment. It also meant the beginning of the competition between Sai City and Kunlun City. The academics were happy to control the conflict between the two to a certain extent. At that time, the academics could take the opportunity to expand their influence in the special warfare system and give Sai City a certain degree of support. No one would find it troublesome when it was mutually beneficial. However, the only thing that Zhuang Huayang did not expect was that Situ Tsangyue would send Tribulation here. Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of Zhongzhou State and the most powerful assassin in this realm, entered the Sky Academy. Kunlun City was not the only one who felt uncomfortable. Even Zhuang Huayang himself felt happy and worried at the same time. By placing Tribulation in the Sky Academy, it could no longer be said to be Sai City's counterattack against Kunlun City. The sharpest assassin in Zhongzhou State stepped into Huading from the northeast. At the same time, it also meant that Sai City, which had always stood aloof from the world since its establishment, was about to completely wake up. Of course, it was not all because of Kunlun City. It could only be because of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's influence was even greater than that of Kunlun City. Tribulations coming to the Sky Academy completely showed that Sai City had already known Li Tianlan's identity. Zhuang Huayang knew Li Tianlan's identity, and he also knew the entanglement between Situ Tsangyue and Li Guangtu in those years. Perhaps all the upper class of Zhongzhou State had heard of this. It was not difficult to understand whether the hidden god of Zhongzhou State in Sai City loved Li Guangtu's son or hated him. Now, with the arrival of Tribulation and barely saving Li Tianlan, Sai City's position had been obvious. Love me, love my dog? Zhuang Huayang looked thoughtful. He suddenly realized that it was a good move to draw Li Tianlan into the academics. In a short period of time, this young man with a sensitive identity had connected too many things, intentionally or unintentionally. No need. Tribulation spoke slowly. When he did not speak, he seemed to be a shadow in the dark. He was so quiet that even if he stood there, people would involuntarily ignore him. But once he spoke, his low and hoarse voice would instantly attract all attention. In the current state of young governor, he doesn't need anyone to protect him. I can't stop those who can kill him. Zhuang Huayang looked stunned. Young governor? Sai City will announce this news in the near future, confirming Li Tianlan as the next governor of Sai City. Tribulation said in a flat tone. Zhuang Huayang's face changed, and for a moment his expression was extremely interesting. Two opposite emotions, ecstasy and worry, intertwined in his heart. He opened his mouth and said subconsciously, "This is really an accident." There was too much and too complicated information behind the news that Li Tianlan had become the young governor of Kunlun City. From the perspective of the academics, this was naturally a good thing. The descendant of the lonely Li family joining the academics was completely different from the young governor of Sai City joining the academics. Everyone could only look forward to his potential and growth in the former, while the latter could further strengthen the relationship between the academics and Sai City. Perhaps everyone in the academics was more than happy to see this. But from the perspective of the overall situation of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, this was definitely not good news. Sai City, which had been silent since its establishment, suddenly announced its successor, who was a stranger to most people. Whether most people were curious or not, at least some big forces that had been paying attention to Sai City would definitely do everything possible to find out Li Tianlan's identity. The surname of the young governor of Sai City was Li. This information in itself was an important clue. It was no exaggeration to say that once the news of Sai City was announced, Li Tianlan would be directly exposed to the eyes of all parties. How long could he hide his identity? 1 day. Or 2 days. Once his identity was revealed, the entire special warfare system of Zhongzhou State would definitely immediately set off a violent storm. The descendant of the Li family became the young governor of Sai City, which would make countless big shots sleepless. The Prince Group, Sai City, Dongqing Clan, Kunlun City, the Wang family of Beihai, Samsara, and even some foreign forces related to those years would be completely involved. At that time, the entire Zhongzhou State would be filled with gunpowder. How could the academics survive? Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan? Zhuang Huayang muttered in his heart, shook his head and smiled bitterly in his heart. This is simply a scourge. I suggest Her Highness Hidden God take it slow on this matter. Zhuang Huayang finally spoke. As he spoke, he emphasized again, well, take it slow. Li Tianlan's current physical condition was extremely bad, and no one could see his future. But at least according to Zhuang Huayang's knowledge, it was extremely difficult for him to recover, but it was not impossible. Once he recovered and became the young governor of Kunlun City, both Kunlun City and the Prince Group would rush over to tear him into pieces when his identity was exposed. At that time, the entire special warfare system of Zhongzhou State would immediately become extremely chaotic, and some foreign forces might even have the opportunity to take advantage of it. No matter how much the academics wanted the right to speak in the special warfare system, it was impossible for them to do so. For hundreds of years, senior officials, generals, and even experts of the invincible realm acted within the rules. If they fought too fiercely and foreign forces took advantage of it, what was the difference between that and treason? Zhuang Huayang was silent. Thinking of the treason case 20 years ago, there seemed to be a trace of haze in his eyes. Yes, take it slow. At least wait for Tianlan to recover first. Tribulation nodded, but his eyes were a little confused. Although Li Tianlan's sword was forced back by him, there was not much potential and vitality left. Tribulation didn't know why Li Tianlan still had 1 foot in the thunder-shocking realm, but it should have something to do with his excessive overdraft of vitality. Although he couldn't figure it out, it was the only explanation. It was easier said than done to recover from such a strange state. Did he really have to contact the Wang family of Beihai? At present, it seemed to be the only way for Li Tianlan to recover. The Wang family of Beihai did have a way to save Li Tianlan, but he couldn't come up with a decent bargaining chip. Talking to Wang Tianzong about this was not drawing his blood at all, but digging his heart. The murderous weapon-setting son of Sai City was powerful enough, but it belonged to Zhongzhou State. Sai City had the right to use it but not the right to trade. Tribulation stood quietly. The mask that almost covered his whole face was shining. His expression couldn't be seen, but his eyes became obviously agitated. What is Tianlan's situation now? Zhuang Huayang glanced at Tribulation and suddenly asked. His body is very poor but his combat capability is very strong. Tribulation answered subconsciously, but his mind was obviously not on it. In short, let's put off the matter of young governor. If he can recover, it's better to announce it after he graduates. Zhuang Huayang said seriously, that's the best time. I will also tell Her Highness Hidden God my suggestion. 3 years later, Li Tianlan graduated. If Li Tianlan could recover in these 3 years, it would be enough for the academics to completely value him. 3 years' time would also allow the academic faction to get closer to other parties. 3 years later, the midterm change was almost settled. As the current ruling group of Zhongzhou State, there would definitely be an outbreak after the chief stabilized the situation. At that time, the academics would not be the dominant force, but at least the academics would be stronger than it was now. That would be the time when everything would be ready. As for now, everything was still clear and the future was uncertain. If Li Tianlan's identity was exposed, once the Prince Group and Kunlun City went all out, their strength would not be enough, or even far behind. Once the conflict broke out, Sai City was bound to go all out. But the crux of the problem was that Sai City had stood aloof from the world since its establishment. When this organization was mentioned, people would think it was very powerful, but when they thought about it carefully, they didn't know how it was powerful. Sai City, with less than 1,000 people, was basically supported by Situ Tsangyue and several top assassins. As a newly established giant force, compared with Kunlun City and the Prince Group, Sai City was far behind them in terms of scale and foundation. The Dongqing clan seemed to be close to Li Tianlan now, but the actual relationship was confusing. Zhuang Huayang could not guarantee what kind of support the Dongqing clan would give Li Tianlan when the great change happened. Even if they were willing to go all out, the giant group had always been very loose. It would be good if they didn't make trouble for the Dongqing clan. It had never happened to expect them to work together. Even if it was the academics, everything Li Tianlan had shown now seemed not enough for the academics to make up their mind to fight the Prince Group and Kunlun City at all costs, especially in this sensitive period. Everything was not clear yet, so it was better to keep a low profile. Tribulation glanced at Zhuang Huayang and turned to the Sky Academy without saying a word. Zhuang Huayang frowned slightly, but he also knew that the Lord of Shadow in Zhongzhou State was notoriously difficult to get along with. He smiled helplessly and was ready to leave. Suddenly a cell phone rang. Zhuang Huayang froze for a moment and then answered. On the phone, Qin Weibai's cold voice sounded. Headmaster Zhuang, is there another body at the scene? Zhuang Huayang froze for a moment and saw the black-robed man lying on the ground not far away. Yes. He nodded and chuckled. Keep it. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. I left in a hurry. Maybe I've seen that person. Zhuang Huayang said yes with a smile and hung up the phone. At the same time, inside the garden party, Wang Yuetong, whose eyes were red and swollen from crying, rushed through a picturesque antique bridge and came directly to the octagonal pavilion in the center. In the pavilion, Wang Tianzong's figure was still sitting there, seemingly meditating. At this moment, he was no longer the center of the world when he was completely quiet. At this moment, he seemed to have become a part of the pavilion. One could not even feel his existence by feeling alone. Wang Yuetong hesitated for a moment, gritted her teeth, walked over and said softly, Dad. Wang Tianzong, who seemed to be thinking, suddenly came to his senses. Looking at his baby daughter's red and swollen eyes, his eyes suddenly focused. What's going on? Did that guy dare to bully you? No. Wang Yuetong shook her head in a panic. He didn't bully me. He saved me again. Someone just attacked me. 3 thunder-shocking realm experts. 3 thunder-shocking realm experts. No matter where it was a considerable force. No one thought that it was aimed at Li Tianlan. If they wanted to kill Li Tianlan, a thunder-shocking realm expert would be enough when others didn't know his details. It was a surprise attack team, and a few days later, 3 thunder-shocking realm experts attacked again. Everyone would think that it was aimed at Wang Yuetong. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a flat tone, Where is the enchantress? Sixth sister was entangled with someone at that time. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and tried to calm down. She whispered, Dad, senior brother Tianlan saved me again at the critical moment. He made a sword move and burned his potential and vitality. Can you Can you save him? Wang Qinzong glanced at her. His eyes were not sharp but even gentle. But under his gaze, Wang Yuetong was unprecedentedly nervous. How do you want me to save him? Wang Qinzong asked lightly. I want a bottle. Does he deserve it? Wang Qinzong didn't wait for Wang Yuetong to finish and interrupted her directly. Does he deserve it? I don't deserve it. How can he deserve it? He saved you and I will thank him in my way. But it's impossible for me to get what you want. Wang Yuetong's face suddenly turned pale, and crystal tears swirled in her eyes again. She tried hard to hold them back and her hoarse voice was pleading. She whispered, Please Dad. It's no use begging me. Some things are the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai. Can I give them to you if you act coquettishly? Wang Qinzong's eyes gradually became stern. Yuetong, you're too capricious. I'm very disappointed in you. Maybe it was a mistake to let you come to Huading from the beginning. Wang Yuetong stood where she was, lost in thought. After a long time, she smiled sadly and whispered, Yes, it was a mistake from the beginning. Wang Tianzong turned his head to look at the pool outside the pavilion and said calmly, Don't talk about it anymore. I don't agree. Dad, go down. Wang Tianzong suddenly opened his mouth and said in a deep voice. Wang Yuetong finally couldn't help but shed tears. She glanced at her father's back and turned to leave. Wang Tianzong didn't look back. He just sat where he was and shook his head. He said calmly, Outrageous. Who are you talking about, Your Majesty? An old and gentle voice rang out. Xian Xuanzi, dressed in a Taoist robe, walked into the pavilion with a gentle smile and eyes as bright as stars. I've spoiled Yuetong. Wang Tianzong stood up and said with a smile, Sorry to make you laugh. Please sit down. Her Royal Highness is a little lucky star. Without her, how could you find such a talent like Li Tianlan? Xian Xuanzi sat opposite Wang Tianzong with a smile and said calmly, Talent? Not anymore. I heard that he just burned his vitality and potential. I don't know the specific situation, but judging from Yuetong's appearance, I'm afraid she's not much better. Wang Tianzong shook his head and said calmly, He should have a tribulation recently. It's his destiny. Xian Xuanzi smiled and said, He should be saved. It's not worth it. Wang Tianzong thought about it seriously for a while and then said resolutely. Xian Xuanzi smiled and said nothing. He never forced others to change their minds. He didn't miss a word that should be said. Whether the other side listened or not, it was none of his business. Don't you want to ask what's going on? Xian Xuanzi asked with a smile. It's good that Yuetong is fine. Wang Tianzong sighed. That girl was out of her wits. What can I ask? Let's wait for the enchantress to come. He paused and said calmly, Do you know who the attacker is? I know their general location but I can't say it. Xian Xuanzi chuckled and pointed to the top of his head. If I say it clearly I'll be punished by God. The most he could do was to give some advice to some people in the Wang family of Beihai. The collision of superpowers was related to the international trend. Even if Xian Xuanzi could manipulate some national fate, he didn't dare to say it rashly. Metaphysics grandmasters all believed in destiny and mysteries of heaven. Some things couldn't be said. That was the rule. Wang Tianzong glanced at him and nodded with a smile. Play chess? Okay. Xian Xuanzi took out a chess piece from the chess box and put it on the chessboard carved on the stone table. Wang Tianzong also raised his chess piece and put it down. Black and white were spreading on the chessboard. Boom. Before the game was finished, a violent explosion suddenly sounded. Instantly, the fire in the garden party soared into the sky. The violent explosion almost spread over the mountains, and the whole garden party was shaking violently. The alarm device in the garden party sounded immediately. Wang Tianzong's expression changed, and his body suddenly disappeared. A white chess piece swirled in the air and finally fell on the chessboard. Xian Xuanzi, who was in the roar, looked calm. He just stared at the expectation in front of him, squinted and chuckled. Good move. He looked at the direction where Wang Tianzong left, shook his head and muttered to himself, The place where destiny belongs. When the chosen one rises, the violent explosion still sounded, drowning out all the old Taoist murmurs. May 2nd. It was the second day since Wang Tianzong came to Huading for the first time in 5 years. The garden party suffered an inexplicable attack. To some extent, the garden party, which represented the face of the Wang family of Beihai in Huading, exploded, and nearly 1/3 of the area was destroyed. Wang Xingxiao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, was seriously injured. Little Princess Wang Yuetong. She disappeared mysteriously. Chapter 84. The third chapter will be released before 12 o'clock, please subscribe. When he returned to Yonghua Villa, Li Tianlan was surprised to find that there were police cars and policemen everywhere near the 9th building. The 7th building nearby had been cordoned off. Many plainclothes policemen and policemen hurried in and out with solemn faces. It seemed that there was a murder case. In addition to the police, some moving companies' vehicles were also concentrated nearby. They were loaded with furniture and drove out of the villa area. Several villa area security guards were patrolling nearby. They were neatly dressed, but they all looked helpless and at a loss. Li Tianlan didn't intend to join in the fun, nor was he in the mood. He just vaguely heard people's discussion. The owner of the 7th building who was killed was a well-known local entrepreneur and seemed to have a close relationship with some people in the district. Now the family of 4 and 5 bodyguards all died tragically at home. It seemed that they had offended some big shots. There were not many onlookers around, but those who dared to come were basically not afraid of trouble. Some people excitedly discussed the cause of death of the deceased, such as burglary, intentional murder, and so on. The scenes of gratitude and hatred were vividly described by their mouths, as if everyone had personally experienced the knife and sword shadows in the 7th building. With a head full of white hair, Li Tianlan walked through the crowd expressionlessly and opened the door of Villa number 9. He had no interest in understanding what was going on outside, but he guessed that what was going on outside had something to do with him. The cause of death of the owner of the 7th building was unknown, so Li Tianlan would not make wild guesses. But he felt that the craze of moving in the villa area had something to do with him. The night before yesterday, Tan Qinghua led a team to rush into Yonghua Villa. The appearance of Dongqing Wudi did not cause too much conflict, but it must have aroused the uneasiness of the nearby owners. The sensitivity of the 7th building was the catalyst. It was probably because of this that many owners felt that Yonghua Villa had become a place of trouble. It was a good choice to temporarily avoid it. A place of trouble and a person of trouble. Li Tianlan opened the door of the villa and laughed at himself. The villa was clean and tidy and everything was neatly arranged. Li Tianlan quietly went upstairs and walked into the bedroom. The bedroom was filled with the rich and natural fragrance of Qin Weibai. There seemed to be a trace of ambiguity in the air. The bed had been changed with new sheets and the quilt was neatly laid on the bed, looking cozy and warm. Li Tianlan didn't take off his clothes. He lay quietly on the bed, and his emotions were so calm that he was almost numb. He closed his eyes and silently felt his body. The extremely powerful force in his body seemed to be still expanding, as if there was no end. But he knew very well that it was because his vitality was still passing away. He was still alive mainly because tribulation had pressed back his sword along with part of his vitality. But vitality was overdrawn. Although it still existed in his body, it was more like a temporary storage. It was passing away every minute and second. Maybe it wouldn't be long before he became a lifeless corpse. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth, but his expression was as cold as a glacier. He sat up from the bed, calmed himself down, closed his eyes and began to meditate. No matter whether the road ahead was a dead end or a smooth road, he would not give up or despair. If the end of his fate was really doomed, he just wanted to do something in the limited time he had left. He had to do something. At the very least he could not wait for death in silence. In the bedroom filled with a faint fragrance, Li Tianlan closed his eyes and completely emptied his mind. Time passed bit by bit, and his breathing became slower and steadier. He seemed to have become a statue. The sun was setting. The sun was setting. The moon was high in the sky. When the moonlight covered the whole villa area, a sweet doorbell suddenly rang, interrupting Li Tianlan's deep meditation. Li Tianlan opened his eyes in a trance, took a deep breath, withdrew from the state of meditation and slowly went downstairs. He felt the condition of his body and subconsciously felt a little disappointed. An afternoon of meditation did not improve his body at all. Even his vitality was still passing away, but at a slightly slower speed. The only thing that comforted him was that the feeling of emptiness in his body seemed to be slightly better. It was not obvious but it was real. Thinking of the bottle of youth he once drank, Li Tianlan fell silent. It should be the effect of the bottle of youth that was working. It was said that youth also contained a large amount of vitality. However, the so-called large amount of vitality was only a drop in the bucket compared to his consumption. At most, it could let him live for a few more days. He turned on the monitor outside the door. On the small screen stood a vague figure in the dark. The figure was plump and sexy, but at this time the charming face was full of anxiety and anxiety. The enchantress from the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment, and then his heart suddenly sank. What was she doing here? Li Tianlan threw away the monitor in his hand, strode to the door and opened the door of the villa. Outside the villa, the enchantress was still raising her hand to press the doorbell. Seeing Li Tianlan come out, the core expert of the Wang family of Beihai breathed a sigh of relief and asked directly, "Is Yuetong here?" Li Tianlan's heart instantly sank to the bottom. It was really because of Wang Yuetong. No. He shook his head and said, "What's wrong with Yuetong?" Although she vaguely knew the answer before coming, seeing Li Tianlan shake his head, the enchantress could not help but become more anxious. She took a deep breath, forced herself to calm down and said, "She is missing. Someone attacked the garden party at noon today. Xingxiao was seriously injured and Yuetong was also missing." His Majesty immediately went out to chase them, but he did not catch them. Crack. Li Tianlan's palms suddenly tightened, and his 5 fingers unconsciously penetrated the metal door of the villa. Who did it? Gu Xingyun? Attacking the garden party, seriously injuring Wang Xingxiao and taking Wang Yuetong away. Now Wang Xingxiao was very likely to enter the thunder-shocking realm. How terrifying was the invincible realm expert with wind and thunder veins. No one could imagine it without facing it personally. In the case that Wang Tianzong rushed over as soon as possible, the other party could seriously injure Wang Xingxiao and take Wang Yuetong away. Moreover, Wang Tianzong did not even catch up with them afterward. Such a person was definitely a real invincible realm expert, and even among the invincible realm experts, he was the kind of person who rarely had an opponent. Among the 4 invincible realm experts in the vast Zhongzhou state, Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, who had never been on the holy list, definitely did not have such ability. The other 3 people were on the divine list. Excluding Wang Tianzong, there were only the hidden god of Zhongzhou state, Situ Cangyue, and the war god of Zhongzhou state, Gu Xingyun. Situ Cangyue ranked 15th and last on the divine list. There was still a gap between her strength and Wang Tianzong's. Even if she attacked first, it was impossible for Wang Tianzong not to catch up with her. In this way, the most suspicious target was only the war god of Zhongzhou state. Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, ranked 4th on the world divine list. In Zhongzhou state, his strength was the closest to Wang Tianzong's. In the case of taking the initiative, he was the only one who could barely keep Wang Tianzong from catching up. As for other overseas invincible realm experts, they might also be able to do this. But such people were either the patron saints of other superpowers or the masters of a superpower. Not to mention whether they dared to come to Huading at the risk of dying in Zhongzhou state after being discovered. Even if they did come, what was the point of taking Wang Yuetong away? At the very least, if the other party could seriously injure Wang Xingxiao, taking Wang Xingxiao away would be much more meaningful than taking Wang Yuetong away. It's not Gu Xingyun. The enchantress's face was extremely gloomy. Negative emotions such as uneasiness and irritation appeared on her face, and she could not suppress them at all. His Majesty has spoken to the president on the phone. When the incident happened, Gu Xingyun was holding an internal meeting of the special warfare system in the Hidden Dragon Sea. He was not in Huading at all. For a moment, Li Tianlan's heart was in a mess. The pretty face with tears on it suddenly became extremely clear in his mind. Her pleading and fear, her sadness and despair. "What do you need me to do?" Li Tianlan asked without hesitation. He did not know what would happen to him in the future, nor did he know what would happen to Wang Yuetong. But if Wang Yuetong was really missing and never heard from again, he would not be able to rest in peace even if he died. Don't owe each other anything? The girl who was willing to die with him. The girl who was noble but was willing to put down everything to beg him. How could they not owe each other anything? The enchantress took a deep look at Li Tianlan. From his eyes, she saw worry, anger, uneasiness, and pity. These were the most real emotions. At this moment, all of them appeared in Li Tianlan's eyes. No need. The enchantress felt a little complicated. She shook her head and said, "His Majesty has closed the city as soon as possible. The army, the armed police, the special warfare system, and even the ordinary traffic police have all been on duty and launched a carpet search. The other party must not have left Huading. We will find her." The core expert of the Wang family of Beihai, who threatened to fight with Li Tianlan in the afternoon, looked at Li Tianlan again and said calmly, "Have a good rest. From my point of view, I still hope you can recover as soon as possible." She nodded, said goodbye and turned to leave in a hurry. Li Tianlan stood at the door for a long time before he turned and walked into the villa. As the door closed, the inside of the villa was dark. Li Tianlan was too lazy to turn on the light. He sat quietly on the sofa. After meditation, his originally concentrated will became chaotic for no reason, making him restless. Beep, beep, beep. In the darkness, a subtle but extremely harsh sound rang. The wristwatch on Li Tianlan's wrist vibrated for the first time since he entered the Sky Academy. The blue signal light flashed on the wristwatch. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly froze. There were 3 color signal lights on the wristwatch of the Sky Academy: red, blue, and yellow. Yellow represented temporary tasks. Every student could choose to accept or not to accept them. Blue represented urgent tasks. Participation was also voluntary. But once the task was completed, a lot of credits would usually be rewarded. Red represented combat tasks. The academy had no choice. When receiving a task, all the students must be dispatched. This kind of task was basically an emergency. It was first sent to the wristwatch of the academy, and then it would be updated in the mission system of the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan raised his wristwatch and looked at it. The screen of the wristwatch was completely lit up, and the blue signal light representing urgent tasks was still flashing. At 1:23 p.m. today, Wang Yuetong, an outstanding student of the Sky Academy, disappeared near Lanshan National Park. On the screen, line after line of words appeared. There were about 200 or 300 words, which introduced the disappearance of Wang Yuetong in more detail. This was a task issued by the headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang, who asked every student to try his best to participate in this task. Those who provided clues would be rewarded with 50 credits, and those who found Wang Yuetong would be rewarded with 200 credits. The task specifically noted that this task was 4-star because it was possible to encounter combatants of foreign hostile forces. In the Sky Academy, there was also a credit reward for completing 5 tasks above 4-star in a row. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the screen of the wristwatch. There was no doubt that Wang Qianzong had begun to use the power of the Southeast Group to influence the Sky Academy after failing to find Wang Yuetong in the afternoon. Gu Xingyun was in Yuzhou. So it was very likely that the one who attacked Wang Yuetong this time was the most unlikely foreign force. Because foreign forces were involved, the urgent task issued by the Sky Academy was acceptable. Moreover, it was to find someone, not to fight. So the difficulty of a 4-star task was not outrageous. Li Tianlan silently read the task signed by Zhuang Huayang until the phone rang. Li Baitian's voice came from the phone. Tianlan, have you come back from Zhongyuan province? Have you read the task issued by the academy? The headmaster doesn't allow me and Brother Awesome to participate. Do you want to have a try? Li Tianlan said, yes, I have this plan. By the way, ask Qianxing if he knows where the largest intelligence organization in Huading is. How can I contact him? You don't have to ask him. Li Baitian smiled bitterly. I know the most powerful intelligence organization in Huading, but you can't count on it. It's the power of the Lu family in Huading. It has been developing in Huading for decades and is deeply rooted. Its code name is the Curtain. It's the Lu family where Lu Xiaowei is. I guess they have already received the news of Wang Yuetong's disappearance. But they are just pretending and won't really take it seriously. Behind the curtain, the most powerful one is probably the Huading branch of Jiangnan society. You don't have to contact this one. They are originally a part of the Wang family of Beihai, so they will definitely make great efforts to trace it. It is said that Lu Shuanghua, the person in charge of Jiangnan society, has already taken elites from Jiangnan to Huading. As for some other intelligence organizations, it's useless to find them. Li Tianlan suddenly interrupted Li Baitian and said flatly, I have to contact them. Li Baitian was silent for a moment and said, then I will send you the contact information of other intelligence organizations. Before Li Tianlan could speak, a slight voice that almost everyone would subconsciously ignore suddenly sounded upstairs. In an instant, Li Tianlan suddenly stood up, and the human emperor in his sleeve flew out in the most primitive form. The metal tube of more than 10 centimeters stretched in the air and directly turned into a long spear of more than 2 meters. The space in the villa was violently distorted, and lightning suddenly appeared. On the phone, all the sounds of Li Baitian became meaningless syllables in the distorted air. The silver spear shot straight to the 3rd floor. Li Tianlan followed the spear and sprinted in the direction behind the silver spear. The lightning flashed for a moment and then went out in an instant. In the villa without lights on, 9 men in black who had sneaked up to the 3rd floor were wondering why Li Tianlan was not in the bedroom. Just as they continued to explore downstairs, the silver spear and the lightning flashed at the same time. Thunder shocking. The moment the silver spear flashed, the black-clothed man at the front only had time to scream in horror. Before his voice died away, the silver spear had directly smashed his chest. Li Tianlan, who was irritated and in a bad state, attacked with all his strength. Not only the black-clothed man at the front, but also the two elites behind him were pierced by this spear. The silver spear of more than 2 meters rushed over with a violent whistling sound. In the whistling sound, it was an almost irresistible force. Bang! The 3 people who were pierced by the long spear did not even have the most basic struggle. Under the huge penetrating force, they directly turned into flesh and blood flying all over the sky, and died without a whole body. The silver spear continued to rush and was nailed into the wall. Only a few dozen centimeters of the spear body was left outside, shaking violently and causing a large number of cracks in the wall. The 9 people had just met, and a team led by an expert in the fire-flaming realm was completely annihilated. Li Tianlan's body had already appeared in front of the other 2 teams. This was the first time he killed people in Huading. He breathed softly. In the darkness, no one could see that his eyes had become blood-red. The fierceness and madness that had been accumulated in his heart for many years seemed to have found the most suitable breakthrough point, and he could not wait to vent it. There seemed to be a huge will in his heart that kept roaring, "Kill them all, kill them all." At this moment, looking at the scattered blood in front of him, Li Tianlan did not feel anger or killing intent in his heart, only a kind of strange comfort that even he himself felt. Was he also bloodthirsty by nature? Who asked you to come? Li Tianlan asked softly, and his eyes were as demonic as the deepest darkness, as if they could devour everything. The 6 people in the remaining 2 teams were trembling violently, and their eyes were full of horror. The news they got was that they came here to kill a non-entity in the chi-controlling realm, and the intelligence said that the other party was likely to have the strength of the fire-flaming realm. Before the action, no one took the target they were about to kill in mind. So what if he had the strength of the fire-flaming realm? 3 fire-flaming realm experts led the team, and 6 ice-condensing realm experts assisted on the side. Killing a non-entity in the chi-controlling realm was like shooting a mosquito with an anti-aircraft gun. They came full of confidence, but hit an iron plate of the thunder-shocking realm. The chi-controlling realm? This was obviously the F*King thunder-shocking realm. The 6 people subconsciously stood together, looking terrified. For a moment they even forgot to curse the person who gave them the news. The Zhong family? Li Tianlan looked at them and asked patiently, his tone becoming softer and softer. The Tan family? Still no one spoke. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly, stretched out his hand and suddenly pulled in the air. The dazzling lightning flashed away. In the twisted air, a scream suddenly sounded and disappeared. In an instant, among the 6 people, one of the teams had completely disappeared, and there was not even a trace of blood, only a pile of ashes. Li Tianlan looked at the other team and chuckled, "Who the hell is it?" "It's the task given by Mr. Liu." The 3 people in the last team completely broke down. The team leader trembled and suddenly knelt on the ground. "Spare me, please spare me. I can take you to the headquarters of the curtain, and I can help you find Mr. Liu. Spare me. Mr. Liu. The curtain." The light in Li Tianlan's eyes flashed away. In the past few days, the Tan family and the Zhong family had become the 2 wealthy families that attracted his attention the most. Hearing the name Mr. Liu, he even forgot who it was for a while. But once the curtain and the Liu family were combined, plus Li Baitian's phone call just now, Li Tianlan immediately knew the mastermind behind the scenes. The Liu family of Huading. Revenge at this time? It was a good time. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes with a cold expression. Where is the Liu family? Li Tianlan looked at the 3 people who knelt in front of him and said calmly, "I can take you there." The team leader of the fire-flaming realm raised his head, looking expectant. "No need." Li Tianlan raised his hand again. In the other party's frightened and desperate eyes, there was a flash of lightning. 9 people, 3 teams all wiped out. Li Tianlan suddenly thought of a sentence. As he muttered to himself, this sentence also drifted farther and farther in the dark villa, with extreme killing intent. None of my enemies survived. Thanks to the wind and snow. Chapter 85. This chapter is almost 7,000 words. This chapter is yesterday. There are 2 more chapters today. Please subscribe. As an important part of Kunlun City and even the entire Special Warfare Group, the Liu family might not be the most powerful in Huading, but it had the longest history. Especially after Huading was captured by the Prince Group, several wealthy families in Huading shifted their business focus and moved their headquarters. After leaving only a branch in Huading, the Liu family became one of the few local wealthy families that had the deepest roots in Huading. The Liu family had been developing in Huading since it appeared. When the city was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, the Liu family was a wealthy family. When it fell into the hands of the Prince Group and formed the current situation of independent rule, the Liu family was still a wealthy family. The children of the Liu family had diversified development and had been involved in various fields for many years. They were not the top wealthy family in Zhongzhou State, but one of the most stable families. Even after Liu Tianqing, the most outstanding figure of the Liu family in recent decades, stepped into the invincible realm, Liu Tianqing, who stood at the peak of power in Zhongzhou State, did not help the family with great fanfare. Instead, he let the Liu family develop slowly with his power. At Liu Tianqing's peak, the Liu family had also entered the ranks of the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State. If he had not been killed in a fair duel, the Liu family would have had the hope of becoming a top wealthy family. It was undoubtedly a pity but also a blessing. Although the Liu family's stable and calm style hindered their development to a certain extent, it also saved the whole family. Situ Cangyue and Liu Tianqing fought on the top of Taibai, a new invincible realm assassin against a veteran invincible realm expert. Maybe some people foresaw that Liu Tianqing would lose, but absolutely no one thought that Liu Tianqing would die. Liu Tianqing's death completely established the reputation of Sai City, and at the same time, directly pushed his family to the edge of the cliff. When the bad news came, the whole Liu family did not cry or make a fuss. Instead, they made a lot of compromises at once. Liu Tianqing's younger brother, Liu Tianjing, was the mayor of Huading at the time. Judging from the situation at that time, he was very likely to go one step further. Even if he did not reach the top in Huading, he was very sure that he could enter Yuzhou and the cabinet. As long as he took this step and Liu Tianqing did not die, the Liu family would become one of the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State. At that time, Liu Tianjing had a good reputation. In fact, even if Liu Tianqing died, there was still a possibility for him to succeed. But Liu Tianjing compromised in silence, gave up the opportunity to enter the cabinet, and gave the position to the academics intentionally or unintentionally. Soon after, Liu Tianjing retired completely. Just when everyone thought that the Liu family was about to disappear, Kunlun City made a gesture to protect the Liu family, and the academics also gave limited support. After that difficult time, the Liu family began to develop their well-established intelligence organization. Over the years, the intelligence department of the Curtain had been going deeper and deeper into Huading. Today it had formed the largest intelligence network in Huading. Among the local wealthy families in Huading, the Liu family was far behind the Zhang family in terms of connections, prestige and influence. In terms of overall strength and development prospects, the Liu family was no match for the Tan family. However, in the field of intelligence, even if the Zhang family and the Tan family combined, they would not be able to match up to the Liu family. In recent years, although the Liu family had fallen from the first tier to the second tier, its foundation in Huading had become more and more stable. The influence of Liu Tianqing's death on the Liu family had almost completely disappeared. 5 years ago, the Liu family and the Tan family were connected by marriage. 3 years ago, Liu Xiuqing, the son of Liu Tianjing, the old master of the Liu family, who was only 42 years old, successfully entered the municipal government from the position of the mayor of Yunjian district and served as the third deputy mayor of Huading. The younger generation of the Liu family, Liu Dongchao and Liu Dongyu, also began to make their mark in the Sky Academy. The foundation of the Curtain was getting deeper and deeper. At the beginning of this year, Liu Xiuwei, who had taught at the Sky Academy for 3 years, finally stepped into the teaching office and became one of the deputy directors of the teaching office. At the beginning of this year, there was a rumor that Zhou Shiru, the executive deputy mayor of Huading and a leading figure of the academics, was likely to be transferred to a province in the northwest of Zhongzhou State as the governor in preparation for the midterm change in 2 years. Once this rumor became a reality, Liu Xiuqing was likely to take over Zhou Shiru's position. The whole Liu family seemed to be thriving. Such a Liu family no longer pinned all its hopes on one person, and its vitality was destined to be more tenacious. Liu Tianjing, who was already old, even looked forward to the day when the Liu family returned to the first-tier wealthy families every day. But as a result, the entrance maneuver of the Sky Academy, which no one cared about, completely disrupted the deployment of the Liu family. Liu Xiuwei was killed. Liu Dongchao was killed. In the 10 years after Liu Tianqing's death, the Liu family had never suffered such a heavy loss. Such a result made Lu Tianjing, who had been dreaming almost every day, almost go crazy. He had to take revenge. How could he not take revenge? But as the Sky Academy went on holiday, a series of events made Lu Tianjing's heart heavier and heavier. Li Tianlan disabled Zhong Xiaofeng. Ning Qianxing killed Tan Xilai. Qin Weibai and Zhuang Huayang protected him. It was said that Dongqing Wudi also appeared in Yonghua Villa that night. Lu Tianjing was steady. Just listening to these names he could feel a heavy pressure. He was not afraid, but he still hesitated about whether to take revenge now. Until today, after receiving a phone call, Lu Tianjing, who had not made up his mind, finally took action. 3 experts in the fire-flaming realm and 6 in the ice-condensing realm. This was definitely a big assassination. Lu Tianjing had no choice. He had sent people out. At this moment he could only wait quietly for the good news. Today was the Lu family's family banquet. In the independent small manor of the Lu family, almost all the members of the family were present. Men and women sat at the table in the spacious dining room. In front of them was a sumptuous dinner, which looked very grand. But the atmosphere in the dining room was extremely depressing. The Lu family had been in a difficult situation for many years, which also made them develop a good habit of unity. At the family banquet at the beginning of every month, without 2 important figures, Lu Dongchao and Lu Xiaowei, everyone felt extremely depressed and uncomfortable. "Uncle, why don't we eat first? We don't have to wait for them to come back." "Don't worry, the candidates for this action were personally selected by me. They are neat and cooperate well. They are all elites and won't fail." At the table, Lu Shiyuan, the eldest son of Lu Tianqing, looked at the large table of dishes in front of him, moved his mouth and said in a low voice. He was the only expert in the thundershocking realm in the Lu family, and his strength could be said to be the true inheritance of Lu Tianqing. Although he had not reached the peak of the thundershocking realm, he was only a step away. With such strength he could be ranked among the absolute experts in the whole Huading. Because of this, the Curtain Intelligence Organization that he personally took care of for many years had developed smoothly. "I'm not hungry. Wait a little longer." Lu Tianjing waved his hand and said in a low voice. Looking at the rich food on the table, the old man, who had been low-key and steady all his life, felt more and more uneasy. He didn't know where this uneasiness came from. According to the intelligence, Li Tianlan's realm was indeed in the chi-controlling realm, and today he seemed to be seriously injured in front of the Sky Academy and his hair turned white in an instant. In this state, Li Tianlan was almost vulnerable. The force they sent to assassinate him had almost no possibility of failure. But Lu Tianjing always felt uncomfortable in his heart, and as time went by, this feeling became more and more obvious. Maybe it was because he had never taken risks in his life, so he was worried about gains and losses? Lu Tianjing laughed at himself in his heart. He shook his head and said again, "Xun, call them again and confirm the progress of the action." Lu Shiyuan nodded, took out his mobile phone and began to dial. Lu Tianjing waited silently and didn't say a word. Soon Lu Shiyuan put down the phone and shook his head, saying, "I can't get in touch." Lu Tianjing's heart sank, and the atmosphere in the dining room became more and more oppressive. "Dad, maybe our people are too cautious. Maybe they turned off or muted their phones just in case." Next to Lu Tianjing, a gentle and elegant middle-aged man said. His voice was deep and steady with an indescribable appeal. Lu Tianjing felt a little relieved. He glanced at his son and nodded slightly. After the death of Lu Xiaowei and Lu Dongchao, his son, who served in the municipal government and might become a member of the Standing Committee of Huading in the near future, became the biggest hope of the Lu family. The big shot on the phone today had made it clear that if tonight's matter was successful, he was willing to help Lu Xiaoqing fight for the position of deputy secretary, not to mention the Standing Committee of Huading municipal government. "Grandpa, don't worry. I know Li Tianlan's strength. He can't cope with our assassination team. He can't turn the tables no matter how capable he is when 3 fire-flaming realm experts attack together. Tonight he will definitely avenge my brother and uncle." Lu Dongyu sat in front of the table, her charming and sexy body straight. Her eyes were cold and her tone was bitter. "That's right. When they bring that little bastard back, pull out his tendons and peel off his skin if he's alive. If he's dead, grind his bones and scatter his ashes." After Lu Dongyu, another middle-aged man with a gloomy face said viciously. He was Lu Tianjing's youngest son, Lu Xiaohe, who currently controlled all the business forces of the Lu family. In fact, it was just a logistics company. In terms of business, the Lu family had a short start and poor foundation, which had always been their shortcoming. In addition, after Lu Tianqing's death, many industries were thrown out as bargaining chips for self-protection. Now the Lu family had just recovered. The so-called logistics company was only 2 or 3 billion, which didn't match the status of a wealthy family at all. Lu Xiuhe had a bad temper. He was a playboy when he was young and couldn't be of great use. Letting him control the logistics company was a good use of his talents. Lu Tianjing twitched the corner of his mouth. He looked at the quiet and calm Lu Shiyuan beside him and continued, "Call another one." Lu Shiyuan nodded slightly and took out his mobile phone to dial again. The moment the phone was connected, a ringtone rang outside the villa. The living room was not far from the door. It was quiet at this time, so the ringtone outside the door was suddenly very clear. "He's back. I'll open the door." An old butler who had been with Lu Tianjing for many years stood up with a laugh. Since he was back, it meant that the little bastard named Li Tianlan was dead. Although the old butler was still uncomfortable, he finally vented his anger. And it seemed that it was time to fulfill the benefits that the big shot promised the master today. The butler opened the door with a smile on his face and said casually, "Is the little bastard dead? Did you bring the body back?" "The master is." The old butler's voice suddenly stopped. His pupils contracted in an instant and he stared at the door. A young figure stood in front of him, with a gloomy expression and a strange look in his eyes. He had white hair. The old butler felt cold all over. Li Tianlan stood quietly outside the door and said in a cold tone, "The little bastard is not dead, but the old bastard is." The human emperor slipped into his hand. The metal cylinder of more than 10 centimeters was exquisite and cold. The body of the gun was not extended, but the spearhead was stretched out. At this moment the human emperor was small and dainty, like a slightly long dagger. Li Tianlan directly reached out and stabbed the butler in the abdomen. The blade pierced into the flesh. Li Tianlan's eyes became more and more strange. The butler opened his mouth in horror and stared at Li Tianlan, even forgetting to fight back. Li Tianlan's expression was calm and indifferent. He pulled out the spear and stabbed it in again. A large amount of blood gushed out of the butler's abdomen, and the light in the butler's eyes quickly dimmed. Li Tianlan kicked him into the living room. The bloody corpse flew into the air and fell hard to the ground, blood gushing out. It was quiet in the dining room. Li Tianlan walked into the villa expressionlessly and closed the door. Looking at the different faces of the Lu family in the dining room, he narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "There are a lot of people here. Is there anyone else who hasn't come?" No one spoke and no one moved. All the people of the Lu family seemed to be caught off guard and were all confused. Li Tianlan walked to the dining table unhurriedly, holding a mobile phone in his hand and continued to ask, "Who called just now?" His hair was gray without any luster and his clothes were neat, but his face was pale without any blood. Everyone could see that he was weak. But at this moment, the seemingly weak Li Tianlan's every move brought a sense of extreme danger. He glanced around casually and no one dared to look at him at the whole table. Lu Tianjing took a deep breath and braced himself to look at Li Tianlan. "Are you Li Tianlan? Don't talk nonsense." Li Tianlan calmly held up the mobile phone and said, "I'm just asking who called just now. What do you think? Who do you think you are? You killed my cousin and my uncle. Li Tianlan, do you really think you are invincible in the world? Why don't you take a piss and look in the mirror? Look at you now, you look like neither a human nor a ghost. It's disgusting. Get out of here. The Lu family is not a place for you to behave atrociously." A young woman suddenly stood up, stared at Li Tianlan and said in a vicious tone. Li Tianlan chuckled. In the next second, the silver spear, which was more than 2 meters long, suddenly stretched out from his hand. The spear style was fierce and crazy. As everyone's pupils suddenly contracted, Li Tianlan stabbed the young woman's heart with the spear. Bang! In the dull sound, everyone's heart trembled fiercely. A big hole suddenly appeared in the young woman's chest, from the front to the back, dripping with blood. Whose daughter is this? Li Tianlan held the spear with one hand and asked casually as he stabbed. There was a second of silence in the restaurant. A heart-wrenching scream suddenly rang out, "You lunatic!" Beside the young woman, a lady covered with jewels stood up and pounced on Li Tianlan as if she were crazy. Li Tianlan swung the spear casually. The lady's head flew into the sky and blood splattered. Whose wife is this? Li Tianlan continued to ask without any fluctuation in his tone. Cold-blooded, straightforward, crazy, overbearing and killing without batting an eye, this man was a lunatic. This was the only thought in the hearts of everyone in the Lu family. You. A neatly dressed middle-aged man stood up. He was not angry or frightened, as if he couldn't believe everything in front of him. He glanced at the bodies of his wife and daughter in a daze and suddenly raised his head. But as soon as he said a word, Li Tianlan's spear had directly pierced through his neck. The 2-meter-long spear went through the middle-aged man's neck and smoothly stabbed into the wine cabinet behind him. The whole wine cabinet was instantly smashed, and wine and blood flowed together. Li Tianlan put away the spear expressionlessly and said again, "Whose son is this?" "Enough." A furious roar suddenly sounded. Lu Shiyuan, the only thunder-shocking realm expert in the Lu family, finally reacted completely. Subtle but dense lightning formed between his hands, and the lightning was like a knife, fiercely chopping at Li Tianlan's back. The unique skill of the Lu family, 6 directions chop. Li Tianlan turned back in an instant and raised the silver spear. The air was like a silver flash, and the amazing silver spear had already smashed down on Lu Shiyuan's body. There was no unique skill, only power. Pure power. The gorgeous and majestic lightning flashed on the tip of the spear and collided with the lightning in front of Lu Shiyuan. The crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. The lightning tore the air and crackled. The body of the first expert of the Lu family was directly smashed by the spear and flew out. His body hit the wall, smashed the wall behind him and fell directly into the living room, surrounded by rubble. "Uncle!" Lu Dongyu exclaimed with a pale face and looked at Li Tianlan with eyes full of horror. "Thunder-shocking realm? How could this be possible?" Lu Tianjing's mouth trembled like a convulsion. He looked at Li Tianlan in silence. Li Tianlan, who had smashed Lu Shiyuan away with a spear, had blood flowing from the corners of his mouth. He slowly wiped the blood and said flatly, "Whose son is this?" "Li Tianlan, what do you want? Don't forget that the Lu family used to be a giant family. We once had experts of the invincible realm, and we are the heroes of the whole Zhongzhou state. I am the old mayor of Huading, and here is my son, the current deputy mayor of Huading. How dare you kill us? Do you want to commit treason?" Lu Tianjing said fiercely. "Don't be so serious. The topic of treason is too heavy. Although I don't have any psychological burden, I can't let you put a label on me like you did to my father. What's so great about a giant family? I'm the only descendant of the war god family, but I'm still in dire straits." Li Tianlan chuckled and pointed to his hair. "My hair is white. Don't you see it? Father. Putting a label on him. The war god family." Lu Tianjing's face suddenly became as pale as snow. You are? I'm Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu is my father, and Li Honghe is my grandfather." Li Tianlan's tone was calm. The expressions of all the people of the Lu family who were still alive changed dramatically. It was self-evident how sensitive and secretive this identity was. But the other side said it with a calm face. This was not stupidity. This completely showed that the other side did not plot against them tonight to let them live. What deputy mayor? What old mayor? The dead were just corpses. Do you know what it means for you to do this? Lu Tianjing was in a cold sweat, but he managed to calm down and looked at Li Tianlan. "If you kill us, there will be no place for you in Zhongzhou state. In the future I don't have a future." Li Tianlan said softly, "I'm like this now. What future do you want to talk to me about? You came to kill me, so you should be prepared to be killed. Isn't this very simple?" Lu Tianjing's heart kept sinking. From the other side's tone, he did not hear the slightest hesitation or uneasiness, only determination and killing intent. "I swear in the name of the ancestors of the Lu family that the Lu family will never trouble you in the future and will keep your secret. How about that?" Lu Tianjing took a deep breath and said in a dry voice, "That's not what I want to hear." Li Tianlan put away the silver spear, walked to Lu Shiyuan's seat and sat up. He casually wiped the blood on his hands, picked up a lobster and clumsily peeled it and took a bite. He said calmly, "The Lu family now has 2 choices. Say it." Lu Tianjing's tone was bitter and hoarse. He could almost guess what the other side was going to say without Li Tianlan saying it. "First, I'll kill your whole family and clean up the scene. As long as I don't leave any evidence, there must be someone outside to protect me. If I'm still alive when the truth comes out, I'll figure out another way. At worst, I'll leave Zhongzhou state. I'm a man who's about to die and I don't want to talk about fame and future. Anyway, even if that day comes, you won't be able to see it. I'll fight to the death and perish together." Li Tianlan ate the lobster and said casually, "Say the second one." Lu Tianjing's tone was calm and numb. "I'm short of a dog in Huading, an obedient dog. I think the Liu family is very suitable. Although some members of the Liu family have died, there are always survivors. It's up to you whether you're willing to condescend or not. Li Tianlan continued. Li Tianlan, don't go too far. Before Lu Tianjing finished his words, another member of the Liu family's branch stood up and roared at the table. Li Tianlan waved his hand casually, and a chopstick in his hand flew directly to the man who spoke. The silver chopstick instantly sank into the man's forehead. Li Tianlan, whose eyes didn't change during the whole process, peeled the lobster seriously and said calmly, "If you don't want to condescend, go to hell." A piece of peeled lobster meat was suddenly put on Li Tianlan's plate. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and looked up. Lu Dongyu came to his side at some point. She calmly peeled the lobster in her hand and continued to deliver the lobster meat to him without saying a word. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and smiled gloomily. "Lu Dongyu, how dare you, you traitor!" One of Lu Dongyu's distant uncles stood up and looked incredulously at Lu Dongyu, who served Li Tianlan. His eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Lu Dongyu did her own thing with a poker face. "Dongyu, send him to hell." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and smiled gloomily. Swish. Lu Dongyu waved her hand without hesitation. A dagger shot out of her sleeve and instantly pierced the throat of her so-called uncle. "Women are the most sensible, aren't they?" Li Tianlan suddenly said in a flat tone. "I don't want to die. The Liu family can't die." Lu Dongyu's voice was stiff. Li Tianlan could clearly feel how unwilling and humiliated this woman, who stood in front of him condescendingly when they met for the first time, was. But she still stood there, and even the movement of her hands became more and more gentle. "Go and get me some rice. I'm hungry." Li Tianlan pushed the plate in front of him and ordered, "You can poison it. If you can't poison me, you will die." Lu Dongyu's face was slightly pale. She turned and left without saying a word. Lu Tianjing looked at his granddaughter with a complicated expression and said nothing. "Tell me what you think." Li Tianlan looked at Lu Tianjing and said, "I don't want to wait. I'm willing." Lu Tianjing seemed to have aged 20 years in an instant. His tone was vicissitude and sad. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "The Liu family is willing to be your dog. Those who are willing kneel down." Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and said casually, "Silence. 1 second. 10 seconds. Half a minute." Lu Tianjing got up shakily and was the first to kneel on the ground. Then everyone knelt on the ground. Some people burst into tears and some looked numb. Who could have thought of crushing their knees and spines with pure force in Lu Tianjing's era? Who could have thought of it? Lu Dongyu came over with a bowl of rice. Looking at her grandfather kneeling on the ground, she hesitated and also wanted to kneel. "You stand." Li Tianlan took the bowl and chopsticks and said lightly, "You did a good job, but I don't trust you." He took a mouthful of rice and continued, "How can I trust you? Tell me what you think is important." He paused and continued, "For example, Kunlun City. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.